Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 8th episode of the Day Zero podcast. I'm Spectre, and with me is Z and Auntie. And just in advance, apologies if you hear some, it sounds like I'm having a bath at any point during the stream. My water softener decided it might want to chime in on the stream, so that's why that's happening. But yeah, we get to revisit some CSGO days in this podcast, so we'll start off with that. So about a week ago or so, I remember I was trying to, I play CS:GO a little bit. I used to play it a lot. I don't really play it as much anymore. I tried playing with a friend, and then we noticed that lobbies were entirely disabled. And it turns out there was a lobby exploit in CS:GO, and if you you could basically infect other people with configuration settings through lobbies and shit like that. So they basically just disabled lobbies entirely. I don't know how much you were able to read into it, Z.
No, so this is one of the topics I haven't looked at.
Okay.
So one question though with CS:GO. So I haven't played it before. Um, I'm assuming, and I'm not much of a online gamer either. But when it comes to lobbies, how does that differ from like the servers and all of that? Like, what exactly are the lobbies that are being exploited here?
Yeah. So it's actually kind of a newer feature. I mean, they've always had like parties, so you could go into like a pregame, lobby before searching for a match, and then friends could join you, and you could join friends and whatever. But they recently added this feature where you can join nearby players. So even people who aren't on your friends list and whatnot, so that you could try to form parties that way. Uh, and then like in that pregame screen you like select what maps you want to play and search for, and then you queue up, and then it puts you into a game which is in a like an actual server. So the
Okay,
lobbies are basically just like shared parties basically.
so it's in the settings for, since you mentioned you can choose like what if you said maps or games or whatever, but you can set that. So it's in those settings that somebody's found an exploit.
Yeah, so I'm they there was no information I could, like, I really looked, I couldn't find much information on where the actual exploit, like how it worked.
Yeah, well, it sounds
um
like it was actively being exploited when they took everything down, so it makes sense they
oh yeah,
wouldn't
it was,
wouldn't
yeah.
give an exploit script or something out for people to use while it's still
Yeah.
It
vulnerable.
it looks like it was. So I found I think a few days ago they released a patch for it. It's apparently it was something inject sv underscore cheat console commands into other people's clients, which allowed them to wall hack. Right.
Yeah, so normally in, lobbies and servers and stuff like that,
Hmm.
there's this sv underscore cheats command that you can use to enable like other cheat commands.
Hmm.
And normally you can't use those in like public areas, right? It'll, if
Right.
you try to use sv cheats one, it'll just say no or whatever. But this exploit essentially bypassed that, as far as I understand. So they could basically issue client commands on other people in the lobby. So they could even go as far as disconnecting other people from the game and displaying a custom error message. So one
Wow.
common thing that some people were doing was they were putting like fake messages saying you are VAC banned, Valve anti cheat, like basically scare messages on
Hmm.
disconnect
Did they
through
include a
the like
Bitcoin
client settings.
address? Your VAC ban now. Pay this amount to this Bitcoin address to get unbanned.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that did happen, but I didn't see anyone say anything about that happening. But I saw a lot of the like back ban, scare messages. A lot of people were getting that. So Valve was actually struggling to fix it. So I don't know if they've actually fixed the like real bug yet. But basically, what they decided to do was they just disabled the nearby lobbies feature, so you can't join like any lobbies anymore unless a Steam friend is in them. So they just basically said, "Yeah, you know what? Screw it. We're not going to have nearby lobbies anymore." Just to, I guess, prevent it from being used more.
Is that their permanent decision, or is that just their stopgap?
I'm I'm not entirely sure. Like from what I'm reading, it looks like it's a permanent decision, but I don't know if they're going to do it like if they're going to, roll it back once they fix the actual issue, because they had an emergency update 6 days ago which disabled those lobbies, and then they had an emergency update yesterday, I think. Um which I'm actually going to go back to the core global offensive page. It might have some information on that.
It just seems
I guess
weird to
not.
me
Okay.
if there's a there's an exploit in this area of code, but yet they still have it. Like you can still do lobbies with friends, but not with randoms. So either they're doing either they're doing that so you're kind of trusting your friends just not to attack you, or it's not vulnerable in that case.
I
And
mean,
I
they released a patch, but yeah, I mean, sorry, continue.
well, I just mean like it seems like a weird solution, unless it's only in some really weird edge case of the lobbies where you don't know anybody in the lobby or something. Because otherwise, it doesn't make sense to only limit to friends because you can still you just a little bit of social engineering and it would still be.
I think it's kind of like a compromise because, I feel like if they removed the ability to play with friends for any amount of time more than like a day, there'd be like their player base would be kind of pissed off. So I feel like even if they wanted to do that, they couldn't. But at least the nearby players thing, it's not as popular as a feature. So they can probably disable that and not have too many people upset with them about it. I think that's what it is. I don't like you're right. It's still, if the core bug hasn't been patched, that friends can still abuse it against other friends, and you could have some social engineering in there, but it's harder to use against other people. Right,
Yeah, like it's a mitigating factor for sure. It's just seemed a little bit weird to me.
Do they have a bug bounty, by the way?
Valve does have a HackerOne bounty. I'm not sure. I would imagine this case would be covered under it. I only know that because I know of some people who have submitted, vulnerabilities and stuff to like source engine, like memory corruption vulnerabilities to them. So I know they take like those kinds of bugs. But this, where it's not like a, as far as I understand, it's not like a remote code execution or anything like that. It's just it's a command thing in the game. Like it's an in-game bug. It's not a memory
So
corruption.
I just actually pulled up their HackerOne. I'll bring it up on the share.
Okay.
But it looks like how they are kind of determining payouts is just by the CVSS score that they give the exploit. So in theory, then this would fall under it because you could still give this a score.
I mean, it is remote code execution technically, not like one that allows you to escalate that we know of.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have a ton of details on it either, on exactly how it works, but it definitely would fall, into scope there being CSGO is a Valve game, I believe.
Yep, it is.
So like it falls into the scope. The way they're doing the scoring there is, literally just CVSS, so it would pay out.
Yeah, it probably would be a bit lower though, because the max impact I can think of is being able to crash other people's game or like disconnect them from the lobbies. So it's it'd probably be a low score.
I mean, that is when we pull up a CVSS calculator,
$200 for that sucks. I mean, I get it. I just
Yeah, it sounds like they pay out pretty decent though when it comes to the critical stuff. So remote command injection, all that.
But like if it has an ability to like diminish your product, right? Like cause downtime and shit like that. Like I wonder if that technically could be upgraded. I mean, technically through the scoring, it might. Well, 7.5.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely debate some of these things like the user interaction. Privileges required. I guess you could maybe call that a low too. Like you can push some of these up, or I don't know the details on the actual attack, so I put it as low. But you put that high, like it definitely drops down a bit depending on how you want to score this. But yeah,
I mean, yeah, either way. I mean, I guess it always is curious to me, like when someone would contemplate, like, okay, is it worth submitting a bounty or just do I want to piss off a lot of people across the world?
Why not?
Well, it seems like this person decided to go with the latter.
Yeah, I was about to say they were just like, nah, or a group of idiots found it and no one could contain the information. So
yeah. I mean, it's not as big of an issue as I remember seeing in CSGO before. I remember a few years ago, I think think it was a few years ago. I'm pretty sure there was a vulnerability where you could like target DDoS other players if you had their Steam ID or something. I don't know how that worked. I only saw a mention of it recently, just because when I was looking into this. But yeah, I feel like maybe a medium score or something like that would be a fair
Yeah, I mean,
assessment of it.
once we know more about what you could actually do, like if you can get code execution, um, that obviously brings it off from just being denial of service to confidentiality and, because you can get like all the if you can run code, you've basically compromised everything.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
near
like, if
10
it has that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we'll have to see. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we don't get any technical details. It's Valve. They don't really like talking to anybody about anything. Although I will say here that, it says rumor has it, because Valve is really terrible at describing what their updates do. They're like, their PR is just, well, it's getting better, but it's always been kind of bad. But it says it appears that the bug has been fixed in the second update. So it might be fixed, but it's not like a, hard verified came from Valve. It's
So,
kind of
live
just what this guy
diffing
looks
stream?
like. Yeah, we'll do that. But moving on from the CS:GO stuff where we can't get too technical, there was also a Vita kernel exploit release from Flow, and so did you get did you get a chance to look at this too much?
It was
See?
these first two that I didn't look at.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so what I thought was cool, it actually changed 3 different exploits. So it says right here, MIPS kernel exploit, PSP emulator exploit, and the ARM kernel. So I managed to talk to Flo a little bit because I'm friends with him. I've talked to him a little bit, and he managed to tell me a little bit more about the exploit. Not too much, but so I actually didn't know that the Vita has a dedicated MIPS processor, and I'm guessing I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that's because the PSP ran MIPS. And then I'm guessing they use that processor for running the PSP games, like
Yeah,
backwards
does the
compatibility.
Vita does backwards compatibility, I'm assuming?
Yeah. So basically, this exploits the PSP like through a PSP game, and then it chains that with the main ARM kernel exploit to get a full chain jailbreak. And so I was able to get some higher level details on the vulnerability used. So the MIPS exploit was a race, and then the other 2 were memory corruption. So I can't go into too much detail about the bug details because it's still a 0-day as far as I know. I don't think Sony's uh, even knows what these bugs are. So that's as far as Flo and I are willing to talk about it. But yeah, it's this came just a year after he did another exploit release, and I remember I linked it. I don't know if you've managed to take a look at uh, the last Vita jailbreak that was released, but it kind of shows how crap some of the code is for the Vita. I remember
What
they
type
had a.
thing? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, you can go ahead there. I was just
Well, I
gonna.
was just going to ask what type things you saw in the code that, made it look so bad. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're going to get into.
Yeah, so I actually have a link. So the last one was named H Encore, so it actually wasn't even a year ago. I thought it was more than that. So the funniest part was probably the meme copy. So let me just search to that. Oh, thought I. Yeah, there we go.
Sorry, just to
So
interrupt. You say that as meme copy? Oh, I see. I
yeah,
thought
it's
that
a
was how
joke.
you were actually reading it. I see.
No,
That's more like meme copy. Yeah, I see that now.
yeah,
I was
yeah.
just saying the same thing.
It's a joke because Sony essentially like made a had a bug in memcopy in the kernel. So they had like a integer signedness issue. So if you specified a really large length that would be negative if it was a signed integer, instead of copying like a large amount of data like you would expect it to, it would just only copy a few bytes because they had a signedness issue in their memcopy. It was pretty funny. But yeah, funnily enough, that bug actually got in the way, I think, of his last exploit. But yeah, it's just more interesting news about console hacking. I've kind of wanted to look at the Vita, but I don't have one, and you look around and the prices for them are just ridiculous considering how old the console is. I guess because
Yeah,
they've
are they
stopped making
still
them.
even making games or anything for it? Like,
No, the Vita ZOL. I don't think they're making anything. I think they stopped production of the consoles.
They did just in March, actually. I think they stopped.
Yeah,
Believe it or not, only like what, a month ago, 2 months ago.
yeah. So trying to buy one, like I've seen listings for like $500. I'm like, dude, I'm not paying $500 for a 2012 console.
For a nice,
So
half a gig of RAM, and it basically does nothing new anymore.
yeah, the Vita's a really interesting console. I'll talk a little bit about this since it's relevant to the Vita stuff we're talking about. The Vita's security is actually pretty decent. So the Vita and the PS4 were released kind of close to each other, right? The Vita was the handheld, and the PS4 was more of the more traditional home gaming console. And the Vita shipped with quite a lot of mitigations. Like I think it shipped with SMAP and all that kind of stuff. PS4 didn't. It just shipped with a lot of mitigations and stuff like that. And the I think their signature stuff was recently broken, like their encryption. But I think that was, yeah, so they did have a bit of a crypto fail, but generally it was like a fairly secure console, and it is a bit more difficult to exploit just because where you have those mitigations like SMAP and stuff in the way. So that's kind of why I wanted to get into it. And I don't know if I will, but it's a pretty interesting console to look at.
Small question for that. Does that mean I'm not really into console hacking, but since it just EOL, does that typically for most of these companies mean they stop patching stuff? They stop trying to go against, like, again, this type of project obviously is not something I assume Sony would be like, awesome. So would they keep trying to do mitigations against these since it's EOL, or is it kind of up
they
in the air?
they could. I remember there was a PS3 exploit that was released, fairly recently. I think in like the late 4.x firmwares. And I don't know if they consider PS3 EOL yet. Well, yeah, like they don't have games or anything coming out for PS3 anymore. But I think they did do a security fix, so I think they will. Like, it's if I had to, like, I don't think they'd put too much work into it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
he
usually end
published
of
this
life
payload.
is like, they're done supporting it.
Mhm.
In the case, because I mean, some PS3 games like still have online modes that I'm sure are running. I couldn't
Yeah,
name any,
they
but I
do.
imagine some are. So there's probably some demand. Just because PSN, I assume, is still working on PS3. Maybe I'm mistaken about that, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it is.
just because of that, some of the security fixes still might come. But generally, once you hit EOL, that's going to be the end of any kind of active work.
Okay. No, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
I mean, I think with like maybe this exploit specifically even, there's obviously the payload out there. There's the game download for people who want to jailbreak their Vitas. I don't
Mhm.
think that Sony's gonna go through all the trouble of, downloading it, reverse engineering it, trying to find the vulnerabilities, patching them, shipping the thing. Like, I think if information comes out about the vulnerabilities that they will do like a quick fix for them and put out an update. But I don't think they go through like a bunch of hoops. So
Okay.
as long as like there's no like write up or anything obvious that gets published about the bugs, I could see it being just something that just remains as a bug for you know ever. We can hope.
The best types. No,
Yeah.
okay, cool. No, I was always curious because I know that some of them will still actively monitor. They got to be curious at least, but I wasn't sure how much they actually care to do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean the biggest concern that these consoles like Sony has is the piracy concern. But like you said, they're not really selling the games for them anymore. They're not selling the consoles. It's like they probably don't have too much of a worry about it. So we'll have to wait and see if they push the security update. But I wouldn't be
Mhm.
surprised if they don't.
Oh,
So
good to know. Good to know.
yeah. But we can talk about a more modern console that is, considered current gen, which is the Switch. So I actually remember seeing this tweet that this developer put out before this story broke. And it was basically, this guy was just like, I have a crazy announcement to make. I basically shipped a game that has an Easter egg that allows you to run like arbitrary Ruby code on it.
See, and I'm wondering, like, what was he thinking would happen?
Yeah,
I mean, like, he's got his apology in here and stuff, but yeah, like, essentially, for anybody wondering, like, he had a Ruby interpreter in this, the game, I think it was called A Dark Room.
Yeah.
And you access it by plugging in a keyboard and pushing the tilde button, and it'll basically just open up a Ruby interpreter for you. You can type your code in, run it. Exactly what you're saying, and clearly it's hidden functionality.
Yeah.
Clearly he knows he shouldn't be doing this.
No, you should totally do this, dude. That's
so
awesome.
Let's tag Nintendo in the announcement. Hashtag Nintendo.
I mean, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, this is like the ultimate guide to if you ever want to have your publishing license taken away. This is how you do it.
Yeah, I'm sure this, like, I haven't seen the publishing licenses, like, I haven't seen their agreements or anything, but I can't imagine this is okay.
I mean, assume as a developer, they tell you, like, don't let people do bad shit on our stuff,
I mean, I feel like if this was like a PC game or a homebrew game or something, this would actually be really cool. Like adding mod support. I know, like, Elder Scrolls, for example, they give access to Lua, so you can, create mods for it and stuff. But when you're talking about a lockdown console like the Switch, where they've put so much effort into locking anyone out of even getting userland code execution, because for those of you who don't know much about the Switch, they've even went as far as removing the web browser and stuff, or trying to make it harder to access the web browser, because they didn't want attackers even getting any kind of a foothold into the console. And this, this feature that this guy implemented is basically giving you userland for free. I mean, Ruby isn't native code, but it, like, you can still do a lot with it.
Yeah, I mean, you're able to get far enough with Ruby, and who say there isn't, the Ruby environment exploit either. I don't know if this was an up-to-date Ruby that he put in there. Maybe there is an exploit in it. I mean, it's not like those exploits don't exist. And, to be clear, like you kind of mentioned, on a PC game, it's fine. On a Switch, like, I like the idea. I wish that was more common. I think it's kind of just an issue with kind of consoles in general, where they are locking them down a lot more than your PC, where you can't just do whatever you want. I would argue that, I mean, that's kind of the core issue, but he actually blames this issue on the hackers. If you look at his apology,
I actually didn't read much of his apology, so let's
so he goes, and I'm just trying to find it here. He talks about
everyone is an armchair expert.
Oh yeah, actually he does say that, but the other ones here is he's complaining kind of about how this simple toy sandbox environment. First of all, I don't know what sandboxing he's actually done, or if he just thinks Ruby is like a sandbox in and of itself. Maybe he did actually have some security around it also. Nothing's been said of that. But of course, then it goes, and of course, it's the community that exploits these things that have pushed it up to that level. I mean, no fault of Nintendo for locking people out of their own systems. It's kind of straight to the hackers are the problem.
Of course.
Which, I mean, to be fair, I'm like, his apology couldn't, also go and attack Nintendo. That wouldn't do a very good job of
wouldn't help them
getting the game back. Yeah, like, so I could understand that, but at the same time, that sentiment isn't uncommon.
I mean, yeah, so where I could see this type of idea flying by would be the Xbox One. So I haven't really, played with it, but as far as I understand, the Xbox One actually lets you write, limited functionality apps and stuff like that and be able to run it on the system.
Yeah, I believe you can build for it.
Yeah, you can't distribute it, I don't think, without a license, but you can use it on your own console and stuff like that. So like this kind of functionality in like on the Xbox One, I think would be a lot more acceptable because they're like more open with their userland component of their system, probably just because they have so much more faith in their like they use VMs and everything. The security of the Xbox One is insane. But on the Switch of all consoles, which has tried the hardest to lock down userland than any other console, it's just I don't really know what he expected to happen other than what did happen.
Look, man, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. I mean, this is literally, I don't even think he had bad intent. That's
No,
the
he clearly didn't
yeah.
have bad intent with it. I mean, that's why he kind of announced it to be like, "Yay, we got Ruby in here." But I mean, did
But that
he?
is,
I just can't see how he didn't see this coming,
Yeah.
I mean, this is probably,
or
but
it
to
was
be fair,
intentional.
I don't know what he means when he says I discovered this 25 years ago. Like the joy of coding, I assume is what he means there. But
Yeah,
like he most likely is someone that, if I had to guess it, is more of a developer than like a hacker. So he doesn't really think of the implication. You know what I mean? More just looks at it like, it's just a fun little code editor. Where people like us might go, oh, cool, a code editor. What commands can I run? What can I do with this thing and go crazy with it? So that's just one of those things, though, man. That like I feel like anyone who knows like anything about Nintendo knows they're pretty harsh, and I don't want to say
Oh
harsh,
yeah.
but we're pretty strict and respond very quickly to shit like this.
yeah.
Oh,
Well, I
dude.
mean, on
Yeah.
that, like, I'd understand it a lot more if it was just like a feature that say you beat the game or did something and like you got it. But just it's so easily kind of accessed. Like it's clear he knew he shouldn't be adding that in there. I think he actually mentions that he figured that plugging in the keyboard wasn't part of the test plan. Like he mentions that. Like that kind of shows that he understands at least a little bit of the implications of what he's doing.
I snuck it in. Like just those four words as like kind of implicates him dead to rights there. I snuck it in. Like if you knew if you
Yeah,
thought that it was, a legitimate thing and wasn't going to be abused, then why would you sneak it in, right? So,
yeah. No, that's you. You said it right. That's probably the best way to leave it. Is I snuck it in. Well, that's literally,
I
you
mean,
had to sneak it in. That means you probably shouldn't have put it in, dude.
yeah, I definitely feel like if he said, because I imagine with Nintendo, pretty much all these companies, right, before you get the license, you have to submit like an overall plan of everything that the app involves and everything. And I feel
Mhm.
like if he said, yeah, I'm going to throw in a Ruby interpreter that anybody can access if they have a keyboard, I feel like Nintendo would have been like, yep, we're not giving you a license. So
Yeah.
that's,
No,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I kind of mentioned though, I'd love to see this stuff, like, and
Oh,
just
yeah.
kind of more of that in the games. And it sucks that the consoles are locking them down more. I think the Switch would be a fun machine just to be able to play around with.
Oh, I definitely
But
wish the
while they
consoles were
have
more
those
open.
rules, I can completely understand Nintendo's take on it. Like, they've created it. That's the baseline that they've set out for it.
I did want to point out just two things, though. Is the first thing he keeps harping on is like, I did this for the kids, man. Is to allow kids, like, I don't
Yeah, I
know
don't buy
what
that,
it
to be
is.
honest.
It
Did
was
it for
for
the
the
kids.
kids, bro. Like he goes, and technical parents to show their kids what to do. Like, I bless you, mate. But come on, dude. Like, this was all for the kids, and you guys are just a bunch of kid hating monsters. Like, come on. It's obviously it's for someone who has to know like what Ruby, right? It's what kids on average know Ruby. And
All the
then he
Well,
kids
it's
nowadays are writing Ruby.
it's for the parents who know Ruby to show it to their kids.
exactly, and the kid's gonna look at it and go, "Why do I care about this?
I
Stop
mean,
typing on the
to be
screen."
fair, let's say, I ran into a game like that had it. It might inspire me to pick up Ruby.
Yeah, I
Might.
just
Like,
I
having
think
that there, especially if it had interaction with the game, and it was a game I was actually interested in, uh, modding. Yeah, like, I could see that being, like, an inspiration to somebody to go and learn the language.
I,
I'm
I think
like plenty of people
yeah.
learn Lua because it gets embedded into games.
No, I totally think. I mean, I'm not saying he didn't do it to some degree so that people could. I just think it was like a little. It feels a little shoehorned where he's like, I wanted to provide a medium for kids to code. Like, there's plenty of mediums for kids to code, and I feel like if he came out with it like that, though, his original message never sounded like that. It was
Oh
more
no,
like,
definitely not.
Well,
here's
it's the
this Easter
announcement to
egg,
the
guys.
Ruby devs, so
Exactly. So it was the intent for kids originally. I question that. And there
yeah,
was
I
one
don't
part.
buy it personally. Like,
There was one part. If you go back towards the little paragraphs, I don't care about these comments. I don't care about any of them. No, but if you scroll down a little bit more, back towards the section we were at, a little more. I think he had something that basically was like, yeah, if you scroll down to the third paragraph thing right there, yeah. He's talking about modding. Yeah, that's what it was. I don't think he even did he in the tweet actually say anything about modding. Like if he had made it a point and I think made like a mod to show like, look, this is I want to have a modding community for our game. Like I think that's another thing that if he originally came out with that, yeah,
as
see,
far
he
as I
just
can
says it
see, no.
literally as he literally just kind of has it as like it's a switch into a Ruby machine. Like I
Yeah,
feel like there. Go ahead.
he doesn't even mention how it could be used to modify anything in the game. He just says it turns the Switch into a Ruby machine.
Like I'm just saying that if you're gonna come out with all this stuff, like then you should have kind of pushed more in that direction, not like the Ruby. Hey, Ruby devs, here's a interpreter for you. Go nuts. Like that's not normally how people do that. Normally.
Yeah. Yeah. So, serves as a warning, I guess. Nintendo probably did that mostly just as a warning. Like, if you're gonna try to pull something like that, you can probably expect your game to be pulled.
Sad day.
They're not gonna let it fly. But I agree with Z. I think it would have been really cool if it would have, it's just not the way the console devs want to go. They care more about the security of their console than they do about letting people run whatever they want on it.
Yeah, and I mean, as much as I would love to see it being more open and running anything, like I completely understand when they kind of make that choice to lock it down to prevent piracy. I mean, piracy is a legitimate issue, especially for the games in the first few months or so when the game's new and everybody wants to play it. That's when it kind of matters, and that's where locking the systems down actually matters. So as much as I'd like to see, like, I get it, that's not always going to be an option. It's a choice that's been made already. I mean, I think that war's kind of been lost at this point, although we've kind of talked a little bit about Xbox and how they do let you kind of build stuff, so maybe we'll see more of that kind of in years to go, but at least in this one, though, it's just the wrong way to go about it.
Nah, I think I like the idea of like consoles slowly working with the community, to like implement some functionality without going crazy, without restricting everybody though, they should go like the way the Spyro devs did it, where they made it so that like some of the exploits and shit would work for like the first 10 minutes or an hour of a game. So like cheat developers thought they'd actually crack the game correctly, and then it would start like messing up the game and lock you out of it and craziness. Like
that sounds fun.
Was that the game that had the an unkillable boss?
I think that was it. Like even if you got all the way to it, like it did all kinds of crazy stuff. Like items would switch, like you would swim instead of walk, and like all this craziness. Like languages would change, and if you made it to the end and fought the boss, it would actually just start the game over and wipe everything you had.
Okay, no, there was some game.
What
Maybe
a troll,
dude.
dude.
Like for some reason, I thought it was a Zelda, but you'd play the game, you'd just be going along, and all of a sudden, you had this massive boss that would show up and like one hit kill you. And there would be people asking on like game FAQs, like, how do I get past this boss? And nobody knows what they're talking about who played the game legitimately, because it's just a one-hit kill that kills everybody if they're detected as having cracked the game.
See, it's like a way more hilarious version of a shadow ban.
Dude, no, that's like the best way too. Like doing things like that, I think are so productive. I know not every company will go for that, but I kind of love stuff like that. Like, all right, I'm just going to make you not enjoy this at all.
I mean, the PS4 kind of does that kind of thing, just unintentionally. Like if you, if you like exploit the kernel and you disable write protection and you don't turn it on within like a second or two, the entire screen just turns into the Matrix. You get like green boxes everywhere. Shit just stops working. The entire system crashes.
Dude, that's all intentional, man.
Yeah,
it's all intentional.
Yeah. So let's talk about some OEM vulnerabilities.
Yeah, so, I had submitted kind of this thing here, and I mean the vulnerability itself, I don't really care to go into detail of. It's essentially an old piece of dead code in CGI bin, did no security checks. That's not so much, or that's not so interesting, but this is 8 separate devices by like multiple different companies that all basically just rebrand the same device. None of them have a good way of doing updates or an easy way of doing updates. So you end up with like a backdoor in like 3 of the devices. That's just like, oh, I don't know how to patch this. And I mean, that's kind of the issue that comes up with this thing, is less about the actual exploit that's in here and more about the 2 issues there of dead code, which I think is a seriously underrated issue, and just keeping devices up to date, actually matters. You should update things, and companies should have a means of updating their products that's reasonably easy. I'll start off just on the dead code. Like, that's something that a lot of people just overlook, but dead code is just extra attack surface.
Yeah, so it was file_transfer.cgi. Yeah, so like you said, it was just a leftover file that happened to have I think it was a command injection vulnerability in like the post request or something. But what I found interesting was the what you were talking about with like the multiple different companies. It was saying that this company Barco patched the previous mentioned backdoor in April 2017, but Crescent didn't release a patch until 2018. So it suggests that there's some kind of like dysfunctional relationship between the 2 teams. Because I think both these teams are under the same company, right? They're like subsidiaries or something.
I don't think so. I'll know about the relationship between those 2 in particular. I thought these were just a bunch of companies rebranding that same one device. So you have a few other companies mentioned too.
Okay, yeah, so the underlying software was developed by a subsidiary. Okay. Yeah, for some reason I thought the Crescents and Barcos were under the same company, but I guess I misread that.
No, it seems like this is a bunch of companies that essentially rebrand the one device. And maybe it's almost like smartphones and Android. Like, you can see a relation there where, again, Google might release the security patch and it takes a while to actually reach end users. That's been improving. I think Google's kind of been asking for better response time on getting those patches out, but for a while, like, you might not even get the security patch like that year.
Yeah, like I think Samsung is probably one of the worst manufacturers for that, for like shipping their own, they ship all their own modifications and whatnot, and I think they're pretty late on backporting or like porting over security patches and stuff like that. And I think that's an actually like a really good comparison with this. And the other interesting thing was it said that it was used by over 100 different universities.
I think that was just exposed in North America too.
The only America that matters. Come on, dude.
And all of these IoT devices were exposed to the internet for some reason. I don't really know why. And I think the article even says near the end, stop exposing your IoT to the internet. Nothing good can come of it.
But what if I want my fridge to be accessible from my smartphone when I'm shopping? I need to know what I have. I need to know.
No, seriously, these... I mean, why wouldn't you want that, especially, to know how many eggs are left? Dude, and like, universities are the worst at this in North America. They're so bad. This is just probably one of a billion topics about how bad their IoT data usage is, man. Seriously, this is terrible.
Yeah, and I think, Auntie, I don't know if you could talk a little bit about this, but I noticed in the article they actually used Shodan to search for targets and stuff like that. So, like, I didn't know if maybe you could talk a little bit about how, like, often that's used for, like, malware campaigns and stuff to try to target IoT devices, or if that's, like, a common thing.
I mean, I would say you don't have to look at malware, to be honest with you. Like, most malware probably isn't doing, like, Shodan or...
Yeah, malware, I shouldn't have said malware. I just meant, like, just trying to exploit things.
And now Shodan's used, like, I've used that on engagements.
Yeah, like, if you're talking the baddies or just normal researchers in general, dude, like, Shodan's almost the most used. for finding vulnerable devices. I think every article I see is about Shodan because, I mean, it's simple, dude. It's really cheap to get to. It's free by default, but if you want like more than one page of results, it's like, I don't know, 10 or 20 bucks a month or something like that. I mean, Shodan's huge, and I did want to point out what I think was interesting is I'm actually familiar with Creston. I think
Really?
you guys might be too. We are not making any corporate friends with this podcast. I'll tell you that. But
Anti-corporate America.
yeah, so
Yeah,
like
come
this
on.
company, that company, dude, they do smart home stuff, which
Okay.
I'm not gonna implicate anything. I'm just curious if they're running devices like this. That is, I'm guessing they're outsourcing and they're just buying from other companies that then they put. I would be very curious what other devices, how up to date they are on like patches and stuff like that. When you think of not just IoT, dude, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but like Creston, who does home automation, that's a lovely thought. They're like, yeah, that smart toaster and your smart door and whatever other smart technology they use. It's like 3 years old, and so someone's like opening and closing your front door without you being able to do anything. Like, I think that's the disturbing part, man. That Shodan is literally just punch the query in real quick and you can find again thousands of devices. Like, we're getting a little close to that dystopian future where everything is on Shodan and people are just pinging your everything, your coffee pot to your alarm clock to everything. It's kind of creepy. But to answer your original question, yeah, dude, I mean, it's the most common besides setting up your own mass scan or using something like Sensies, Tensys, I think. I mean, it's simple, dude. Even like a monkey on a keyboard could just type at it and get to it.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the most interesting part, like the most interesting thing attackers would want to do with bugs like this. So basically, I don't think we touched on it too much when we were talking about this at first, but you can get code execution with this because it has command injection and you can run bash commands or whatever. And I guess the big like concern with IoT stuff being exposed to the internet and being exploited is turning it into botnets, right?
Yeah, I mean that's what was it? All the DVRs. God, the campaign. What was it?
Started with an A, I think. I know the campaign you're thinking of.
My brain right now. Let me see. It's basically it all started with like vulnerable DVRs, and basically all these script kiddies were taking it and compromising them, right? And all it did was instead of they were too puny. Like I don't remember. They had to been like not even half a gig of RAM, dude. I mean, less than that. They were pathetic. So you couldn't do anything cool with them, but you could definitely, you have 100,000, a million. I think the dying DNS DDoS was based off like IoT botnets, because you don't need a lot of power. You're not going to get someone's social security number for it, but all these devices add up really quickly, and they're still using the same network. So you just keep running these attacks till it crashes the box, and then they just keep scanning the internet and find them again, and boom, bam. So yeah, most of these things are going to be some idiot uses it for their botnet. And there's probably 17 script kiddies on the same IoT device. So it's just helping facilitate cybercrime nonstop. And still can't remember the campaign name. It's pretty sad because I swear I've talked about it a billion times.
Yeah, of course, when you need the name, that's when you forget.
I swear.
All these creative names, you can't even remember them.
No. Dude, everything now is like there's so many different names. It's just next thing's this, it's too much.
Yeah, I at the risk of sounding like an idiot, I almost was Mirai.
Oh, that's it, Mirai.
Mirai, yeah, I think it was Mirai. I wasn't sure though.
Well, there's been multiple iterations too. I can't remember all of them, dude. But yeah, Mirai was the original Big Daddy, to which all the few hackers who started it, I think, got arrested. So don't do this, kids. Don't do it.
Don't try this at home.
don't do it, man.
Actually, at home is the only place you should try it.
Oh, well, there you go, actually. Damn.
Don't try this on your corporate network.
Yeah, good way to turn that around. So, cool. Yeah, so, the main takeaway from this article was just like the updating systems were terrible because of how much it was outsourced.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily that it was outsourced, and I do actually want to touch on the dead code aspect too.
Okay.
Just because dead code is one of those issues that I think a lot of people just don't really think about. Like,
Okay.
you'll just calm down code or just not call. And of course, it's not called. It's not used anymore. And that's not necessarily wrong. But one concern, I've seen a number of vulnerabilities introduced this way, where there's some like super old code in some class that was written in like the 90s, has like no security, nobody's thinking about security at this point. And then it's just like, well, we rewrote it. The function's still there because maybe some random class actually did call it, so it ends up becoming dead code that's just kind of left there because nobody knows for sure that it's dead code. Like, it's there just in case some random thing actually did need it. And then, 10 years later, somebody comes along, it's like, okay, I need a function that does this. And they kind of just search the class looking for the function. Maybe a new dev doesn't know that that's kind of been deprecated or something. And then they reintroduce the vulnerability or reintroduce the vulnerable code. So that's where dead code, I mean, it's overlooked as an issue because it's rarely, I mean, in this case, it was an immediate issue because you could still call it even though nothing was using it. But just the general principle there of, dead code can introduce vulnerabilities in the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. It's just, I think the like the core of the problem comes from when you get really complex projects. It's very difficult to trace all potential paths, right? Like to see what's being used and what isn't. Though I imagine there is some like decent tools out there for doing that.
Well, this is why everything needs to be rewritten in Go.
Yep, we're gonna shill some Go here, because Go actually, for those of you who haven't written Go, Go will tell you when functions aren't being used and stuff like that. Like the I use Goland IDE, and it'll throw warnings for like everything. So
Is it
if you
just
have
the
an
warning
unused,
for not, or will it fail to compile?
I think functions you can put unused functions, but I don't think you can put unused variables. I'm trying
variables,
to think.
I'm quite certain you can't, because I definitely need to go back and have that little temporary string that I want to print out, and then I
Yeah,
stop printing it and it complains.
Yeah, so you can't have unused imports. You can't have unused variables, I don't think. But I think you might be able to have unused functions, but I can't
Well, that's a
think of
bug.
it at the moment.
Go needs to fix that. No more
CVE,
unused
please.
function.
Yeah. But yeah, so that combined with the update system was what this article was about. And our next article is also about an update system. But it was the update system itself that was exploited.
Well,
So
I mean, kind of update system, support agent, does a little bit more than just... Yeah, it does more than just update. And, I'm kind of mixed on this one. Like, it's an interesting little bug. So the idea here is the support assist agent on Dell computers runs a server listening on localhost port 8884. And then when you go on like the Dell website or whatever for support, and I think he goes through the example on here of a looking for driver updates. The Dell domain will make a request to port 8884, and it'll send one of the many commands it supports. That'll get like a list of drivers, it could check for the updates, and it could do, a bunch of stuff. And I mean, putting that on a server online, I think that's the problem. But, the way Dell went about this, they use the access control allow origin header. So just a random website can't start making calls to it. The server code itself looks to make sure that Dell.com is or that the domain ends with Dell.com. Or like one of their
like a
domains.
Bunch of other, their domains. Yeah.
Like it looks for their domain. I mean, like, it checks that refer origin. It only listens on localhost. This isn't listening on the network. They've done all the right steps to secure this. I'd still argue it's an issue to want to build this in general. Just have people download something that does it. Just run it all local. Don't expose it like this. But like the way they've gone about this, they've done most things right.
Yeah, I mean, I was basically in the same boat as you. I was going to interject and say, like, I think I know a bit about why you're like on the fence about this one, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, you're right. Like you know, they have a lot of like good secure practices in there, which is actually a bit surprising. I was honestly expecting support assist to not even do this much due diligence when it comes to the security. I must say though, I'm not a fan of it because it is pretty bloatware. Like I think it does ship on default. Like when you buy a Dell laptop, it's gonna have support assist on it unless you wipe it and clean install the OS, which I don't like. You know, I I don't think it should be a default thing. If
Yeah, like
people want to download that to manage that, then that's up to them. But I don't think it should be forced on them
yeah,
necessarily.
like my opinion here is definitely like I don't like this. I'm not in support of it at all. Is like
Oh yeah,
ultimately where I
like
come
yeah,
down on it. But just in terms of like their code, like you guys said, like I was surprised by just the steps that they did take. Yeah, I mean, if the Dell.com subdomain or any subdomain is like compromised, it's broken. If the user's DNS can be compromised, if somebody's already running code on their system, like there are ways that's broken, but I mean, I was surprised that they took the steps that they did. And I mean, if you're going to have that functionality, I can't think of, um, I can't really think of anything more that I'd say they definitely need to do. Um,
yeah. Yeah, so I was gonna
yeah,
like just jump on that point and say that, the attack method that this person chose in the article was basically doing a DNS hijack. And, it you can't really pull off an attack like that without already having a man in the middle on from the local network.
yeah.
So
I mean,
it's
he
like,
used the example like if you have a cross-site scripting in any of the Dell websites,
yeah,
it's just there probably is cross-site scripting somewhere on the website. Well, actually, I don't know that. I don't know what their security practices are for that. Maybe they're using a good framework or something that handles most of that. But
I mean, considering, the security steps they took in this software, I could like I wouldn't be
yeah, it
surprised
just
if it was
takes
secure.
one on any Dell website. Maybe they've got something running from early 2000s that's just
Yeah,
on that Dell domain. Like there could be some random thing out there.
for sure.
Even assuming like all their new code is perfect. But I mean, it just takes one issue in one of those to be able to do this exploit. So I mean, doing the DNS is just he's not testing the Dell websites. He's looking
Yeah.
at this issue. DNS
No.
maybe isn't a real world attack, but it's how you're going to focus on is the support agent actually like something that you could use.
Yeah. Now I do think this would be like way more cool if you actually did find an XSS on a Dell domain and chained it with it, because
Yeah,
that
but
would
then
be a
there are
cool attack.
legal
But
issues.
yeah, I could see that. Um,
Just attack everybody who visits Dell.com.
yeah. Why not, right? Um, I mean but there was one little snippet that I thought was pretty cool. They talked about how they made like a proxy to get the token. So they like created a PHP file that would basically submit the request to get a token and like proxy it. I thought that was a kind of a neat little part of the article, but overall, I mean, support assist, I don't think any of us really like it, but I don't feel like these issues were like I was gonna say I don't think that they're really Dell's fault, but they did actually post an advisory for it, so I don't know what they like.
No, I mean, like, it is definitely an issue. Just having it exposed there. Um,
I just want to see how they fix it though. Like what do they do to prevent it? It contains an improper. I don't know. Because like I feel like if you had an XSS, you could still exploit this, could you not? Like,
yeah, but they could probably either hard code the IP or something like that. I don't know what they did to fix it. My first
yeah,
thought
I
is
can't really
either
see
hard coding
anything.
that or using signed requests would be another thing that they could do. Um,
Yeah.
like just requiring like the server to kind of generate the request, have it signed, so you can't just change the arguments or something. Um,
So yeah, actually, I did forget a little bit there. So they did mention that an issue was that it could use HTTP. It didn't. like I think there was an issue where it didn't force HTTPS.
Okay, yeah.
So I think that's probably like they said here that they try to, like if the URL starts with HTTP, it'll be replaced by HTTPS, but there's a bypass because if it doesn't start with HTTP, it wouldn't replace it or whatever. So I think that was probably what the advisory was affixed for.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah,
just wanted
I mean,
to say that. I
it's
kind of forgot about that. I don't know how, but yeah,
well, I mean, there's a lot of topics to cover.
there is.
But yeah, I mean, I was surprised by the steps that Dell took. Like, it actually gives me, as much as I'd say, a little bit more confidence in Dell, at least that team. Granted, I've still never owned like a Dell product, so
My
what does it
laptop's
matter?
actually a Dell, so
So,
yeah.
are you running a support assist agent?
I actually probably am, just because when I got the laptop, I don't think I wiped it.
Well,
so.
I'm just going to quickly show you this totally safe URL like you should open. Okay.
Okay,
It's
let's
totally
do it.
for the podcast.
Yeah. So yeah. So, kind of it's not a clear-cut article. Like I wouldn't say it's major. Like I think it was kind of made out to be like, oh, if you own a Dell computer, you could be pwned right now, whereas, it's more of technically like on a theoretically yes, but
It's an additional attack surface. I mean, this was a 17-year-old I think who did it. I can give him some credit for it. It's a fair issue to look for.
Yeah. So I've heard that you really like Firefox, don't you, see?
You could
That's your
say
main
that.
browser, right?
It is
Okay.
my main browser.
Okay. So did all your extensions break last week?
No, as I mentioned in our chat there, a couple of mine survived. Like I have this lovely extension, so I don't use Twitter very often, and I think I was just like randomly browsing Hacker News, and somebody had this this extension called Make Trump's Tweets 8 again, where it just replaces all of his tweets with like the font of the tweet with like this crayon scribble. So like every so often I'll just see a tweet from Trump, and it does it when it's embedded on other sites and stuff, so I'll just see it in this crayon scribble just out of nowhere, and I'll forget I even have that extension until I see it.
That sounds
But
like gold.
that extension survived.
Oh, that's what's important.
I do like the clever naming here. The I'll probably struggle to say this, but Armageddon.
Okay.
Yeah, they call this
okay.
Armageddon 2. For anybody wondering, the first one was with the Quantum release when they changed the whole plugin system and killed all the old plugins.
Yeah. So I know the biggest complaint about it was I think uBlock Origin got disabled.
Yeah,
So,
like I was seeing ads, so that was almost made me switch to Chrome.
I'm sure blogs were really happy that day. They all got a nice spike in revenue. But
it would actually be kind of interesting to see, especially YouTube actually, if YouTube videos on like more tech channels made a little bit more money during this period just because of that.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure. I think Chrome is still the big player in the browser market. I think I think
Chrome
Firefox
for sure.
Popular,
Firefox is maybe I think Firefox just breached like 10%.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was that small. So how much does Chrome own then of the market? In percent, do you know?
More than 10%?
Is it like 60, 70?
I want to say 80, but I don't actually. Okay, no, I'm way off. The statistics I just pulled up are saying about 63%. Although this one also pegs Firefox at only 5.09%.
I didn't realize Firefox was that
Firefox
unused.
has definitely dropped. Like Chrome has been picking up market share like crazy. Obviously since they came out.
And then you also got to consider too that they also kind of have that boost from being like the default browser on Android phones too. So it's they've already got kind of that mobile
but
market.
like even when you look at the desktop, like they're still 70% actually desktop browser market shares, 70% to Chrome.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
And that's where Firefox is around the 10%.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I'll actually pull it up, the stats I'm looking at. But yeah, like Firefox it used to be more popular. They've lost over the years, just issues with crashing and all of that. So, green is Chrome for desktop.
Okay.
So it's not.
That's crazy. Jesus.
Dude, I didn't realize.
It's not showing the percents on here, but they're at 70.05%.
I mean,
Dude,
damn.
even now, Edge is still less popular than Internet Explorer.
Wow.
Poor Microsoft, dude. But yeah, I mean, I wonder if Firefox will lose even more users now after, because like you mentioned, this is the second time that they've had a major issue with plugins.
Well, so the last time wasn't an issue with plugins. They straight up just dropped support for the old plugin system and moved to the same system that Chrome uses.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more restrictive.
Yeah, I remember. I think it broke AdBlock, didn't it? The changes they made, because they removed their ability.
So that is a little bit different.
Stuff. Okay.
That one's actually different from what I'm talking about. So the AdBlock one is because they removed the ability to do like blocking changes on the main thread, like to do the blocking replaces. So that's how some of the AdBlocks were working.
Okay.
What changed with the plugin system is they basically removed a lot of low level access. So like I used to use the plugin Down Them All for like downloading all the links, and it was like a little download manager.
Okay.
And it would kind of do its own download system, so you can pause and resume and stuff. And that's been around since before Firefox actually supported that natively. So it removed a lot of these low level functions to kind of this higher level API that's a lot more sandboxed. And it's Chrome, like that's why Chrome doesn't have those add-ons, and now Firefox doesn't. It's just a ton of extensions died with the Quantum release. It wasn't an issue. It was they deprecated them a year before that, and with the Quantum release, they've changed a bunch of internals, including that sandboxing stuff. So that's where they kind of brought in the new system.
Yeah. So, on this issue specifically, the most common criticism I saw of the Firefox team was that they even let the certificate expire, because that's why the extensions were disabled, right? Was the expiration of the signing cert?
Yeah, and we should mention this was well, the intermediate certificate, so the one that actually does the signing. The root cert was still good. Root cert signs the intermediate cert, which actually does all the signing. That one expired, and yeah, it's totally an issue that they let it expire. It actually happens kind of frequently.
I've heard that it's a common industry problem.
Like, especially like HTTPS certificates totally happens all the time. That people just forget, because it's, I mean, with Let's Encrypt, one, they've made it super easy to renew, and two, they have short-lived certificates, only like 3 months. But with most certificates, they're, a year, maybe even up to 3 years. Like, it's very easy to forget. Say you do put in a calendar reminder for it, but in those 3 years you change calendar systems, and I forgot to add in that one because that's not something you see every day. Like, it's really easy to lose the reminder.
Well, and people change all the time too. Sometimes the person managing the certificate goes, they drop it in someone's lap. That person goes, "Well, I got 2 years. Who cares?" Never mention it to me. But like, this stuff happens, like you said, all the time, especially when you're managing a lot of certificates.
Yeah, like there definitely should be a more robust system in place for managing that. And I've never really been in a position where I was managing a bunch of certificates, especially things of this type of importance. So I don't know. Maybe there are some systems in place that they could have been using. But it's definitely an issue that I've seen a lot with HTTPS certificates. Like, I've seen this happen plenty of times, and it's just people forget. I mean, I can fault them for it, and you can fault Firefox for it. I just don't fault them that much for the issue. Like, it happens. Obviously, it's happened in this very noticeable way right now. I can guarantee they're going to make some changes.
Yeah.
Like they're going this because it's happened. Now it's not going to happen again. Probably. I can't actually say it won't.
Hopefully.
But this will be kind of like that kick in the pants to get a better system in place for it.
Yeah. One question though, if you can shed any light on it, is why was it some plugins were okay but other ones weren't? Is it just the
So I don't actually know. I was kind of wondering the same thing, but didn't dig into it.
Okay.
My guess, if I had to guess, is that they did, get the new certificate signed already and had it signed, and any new extensions were being signed by the new certificate already. So those that had updated within, say, like 3 weeks, but that they didn't go back and re-sign like the older extensions or whatever. I don't know what the process exactly is for that.
Yeah,
but that would be my guess. It sounds like newer extensions weren't impacted by this.
Okay. Sorry, Ante, did you want to add something on there? I know you were trying to you were going to say something when I was.
I don't think so. I mean, for the most part, I think it's you guys hit it on the head. I thought I was going to ask the same thing as why it was one and not the other, or sometimes, but yeah, I'm not really sure. I was just curious of that. So
yeah, that's my understanding. But like I said, I haven't dug into it. I don't know what their process actually looks like. I recall reading that somebody mentioned that was mostly just newer extensions that seem to get through it. That said, I do want to mention, some of the comments in here. One of the comments in particular is just some guy responding to the bug ticket. Please document here the root cause and what is being done to prevent it in the future. And I mean, this comes off like such arrogance from this guy. Just like, what's the root cause of this? I don't know. Maybe the certificate expiring. That might be the root cause that I feel like you should understand by this point. I could understand wanting more information about what they're going to do so it doesn't happen, but demanding it in a bug ticket, that just comes off as like really bad etiquette here.
Now, I will say, I thought there was one here that I thought was pretty cheeky. Steps to reproduce. Wait until it's past midnight. I thought that was pretty funny. That's probably why he got so pissed off, I guess. Because that's a golden report.
Well, I mean, what do you say? And I mean that's the reporter. Like that's not. Like that's the guy who actually initially brought this up. I mean, there might have been I'm sure there were a ton of tickets of the same issue.
Yeah, I saw there was a bunch of duplicate mentions.
But... yeah, actually, if you scroll up.
Yeah, duplicate of this bug.
Yeah, if you scroll up there, though, duplicates.
Oh my god. I didn't realize there was that many. There you go.
Yeah, but so this is the guy that, like, the comment you're referring to is the guy that actually, reported the issue initially.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, what else do you say? You wait until it's past the time of the expiration. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of cheeky. It's kind of just like, that's literally what it is. Like, that is the prerequisite for this to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think, this issue's fixed now, right? I don't use Firefox.
So it has been updated, or updates have been pushed both on, like, the desktop and the Android Firefox. They've also put out an update for the extended release, or the extended support release. Okay. So, like, updates are there. I don't know if we want to go into it, but they did do a hot fix that was done kind of quickly using the studies program, or Normandy. And Normandy is kind of controversial. I don't know. Do you remember the Mr. Robot AR stuff?
Can you... No, what was it?
Let me see if I can bring up anything about it. Yeah, so I guess this was back in 2017. But essentially, this whole studies program, and so there's the studies program that essentially, like, lets Firefox perform studies on their users, like, enable, like, what is, I want to say red-black testing, but I'm not sure. A/B testing, that's what it is. Where, like, some people get certain features early if they have these studies enabled. And Normandy in particular is the service that lets them change a user's settings without, like, telling them. They can just silently change your settings. So Normandy's how they deployed the fix. They deployed the new certificate. Or the new trusted certificate. But this Mr. Robot thing is they had pushed a plugin. Now, it wasn't enabled, it was disabled by default. But users all had this plugin installed called Looking Glass, which
My reality is just different than yours.
Yeah, and it was this like alternative reality game as you browse the internet for Mr. Robot. If you had it enabled, it would change sites and it would just do some little tweaks or whatever. I don't recall exactly what the details were for that, but they had used the same program to do that. It's basically their little backdoor into Firefox. And if I were to point to anything that I really don't like about Firefox, I mean, I've used Firefox since like 1. I know I was on 1.5. I don't remember if I was on 1.0. But like I've used Firefox for a long time.
Yeah.
And this would probably be one of my biggest concerns at this point, is this whole studies program just seems sketchy. The fact that they can push these types of silent updates and changes, like you can opt out of it. To be fair, you can opt out. But they have that sitting in there. It's just like, I don't know how comfortable I am with it. Like, I trust Mozilla. That's why I'm not super worried about, but I can understand people that don't trust Mozilla.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting considering I think Mozilla's big stance with the Firefox browser has been the privacy and security aspect of it, which, that plugin kind of sounds like it violates a little bit, even though, you do have to opt into it.
Well, no, you don't have to. So you have to opt into this Mr. Robot plugin. You don't opt into studies. Studies are on by default.
Oh, okay.
So that is
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so that's by default. So like Normandy and all that, that's there by default. So most users would have got this hot fix, which, was used for good. And in general, like these studies and stuff, I believe they're using them for good purposes. They're not malicious about it. But that's coming purely out of trust for Firefox. And should they change or should they decide, we're going to run an ad study or something like that, or we're going to bring back pop-up ads.
In fairness, I think you have to look at the company's track record. Mozilla's always been pretty straightforward. Like, you could...
That's my thought, yeah.
Like Google and stuff, like, they make money off of selling, not really directly selling your information, but using your information for ads, right?
Yep.
Mozilla's made a point of not being that type of company. So that's where I feel like when people are like, "What? That's the funny thing about trust. It can be broken." But it's all of security is kind of like that. All of it basically boils down to trust. But if the company that hasn't, been a giant douche throughout the entire history of existence, then, you can kind of count on it, at least in my opinion. So I kind of agree with you, assuming that's the route you were taking.
Yeah, no, that is kind of how I view it. Like, it is something that concerns me. I won't deny that, but I do trust Mozilla as a company. Some people don't, and I understand those that don't, but I personally do. Because I mean, like, that is, like, if you told me Chrome had that, like, I would very much not be using Chrome.
Yeah,
like, I don't really trust Google with all my information.
Honestly, I think Mozilla would be one of the few companies that I would trust. Because this kind of reminds me of, I remember when Facebook did something similar. Didn't they give out an app to some of their users that allowed them to, like,
they had a VPN app.
Details. Yeah. And
yeah, so they could get all the traffic.
I thought it was they set up literally like internet in like random third world countries that they're like, yeah, so you can access Facebook for free and all this.
Well, they did that too.
There's just so many who can keep track of all their endeavors to get your information.
Yeah, it's just like compared to Facebook and Google, I would trust Mozilla a lot more. So absolutely. I could definitely see that stance. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, Mozilla's done, like, I mean, another thing people like to complain about is the whole Pocket application, which, again, I get, but the neat thing is they're trying to do something different when it comes to the ads. So Pocket, among other things, on your new tab page is able to display recommended news sources. I believe there's some payment involved here, like they are ads. I'm not 100% confident on that, but I believe they are. But what they do is it just sends the entire list of them to you, and everything happens client side. They don't know your browser or like your history or anything. They're doing that like in a very privacy maintaining way. So like that's where I kind of say like, yeah, okay, Firefox has made some, we'll say, interesting decisions. I still kind of trust them, even with that Normandy stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I'd agree.
And if we wanted though talk about something I wouldn't trust, is this hacker who is busy wiping Git repositories. I'm less confident to trust him. Just saying.
Git-based or ransomware targeting Git. Isn't that incredible? Well, it's not ransomware, but...
Well, I mean, it kind of is. It is. Well, it's asking for ransom. Software. I mean, it's... Yeah. Well, I'm assuming that this is being done automatically by software, so it could be ransomware still.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they're doing it by hand. I mean, this is just, honestly, it just sounds kind of fun, actually. It looks like they scanned the internet for Git config files, extracted credentials, and then they just mangled the repository so none of the commits show up anymore, and just, pay me at this Bitcoin address to get your stuff back.
Yeah, it said they just modified Git commit headers, so that's kind of interesting that it's like, that is so easy to reverse, right? It's fairly easy to recover.
It's possible that they didn't do that for everybody. At least the way this is described, it sounds like some people it's possible to recover by fixing the headers.
Okay.
That said, I mean, one of the things about Git is that it's decentralized. Like, everybody kind of pulls down their own repo. So recovery, like, assuming these aren't like, my personal private repository, somebody's probably got a copy of a lot of them too.
Yeah, I mean, you might lose some work, but you won't lose everything.
Yeah, you might lose what you didn't, well, I mean, you'd have what you didn't push, but yeah, with, like, the new things that you haven't pulled yet, sure, but, and that's assuming worst case scenario, they've actually managed to delete everything.
I'm curious, did people release the Bitcoin wallet addresses? Like, we could look it up. It's a public blockchain.
So it actually, they talk about it, that there had been some people that paid the Bitcoin, like 20 some.
Yeah, they actually have the blockchain link here. I only see one transaction on this address, actually.
And you never know,
if you go back, though, to this, I believe if you... Yeah.
There's 27 abuse reports.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. That's what I had remembered.
Yeah. What I thought was kind of funny, though, was their payment was 0.1 Bitcoin, $570. Seems kind of low if you want to try to...
Yeah, but, I mean, you kind of have to choose. You go too high, and can these people afford it? Too high, you might get nobody paying it because it's just too much. Like if somebody wiped out my personal, so I still run a Subversion server. If somebody wiped out my personal Subversion server that I had like some really old personal projects on, like
you'd be kind of sad.
I wouldn't pay that much for it. Like I wouldn't pay 1 Bitcoin for it.
Yeah.
Would I pay 0.1? Maybe not. Probably not.
We don't know what the code was too. It could have been something like pretty important to them where they're like, shit, I have it nowhere else, because people use GitHub in the way that it, can preserve, right? To some degree. So I assume that maybe they just got someone.
Yeah, like I could see why people would pay. But you just choose the amount that's like enough so that they'll pay, but not so much that they're, like it's not too much. So 500 to me is more than I would probably ever really pay. Unless it were like a business. But I could understand why somebody might pay that. And that's why it is probably so low. I'm not sure how... Actually, yeah, never mind. You can definitely... I was going to say, I'm not sure how far you can break down Bitcoin, but you can definitely go well lower than just $500 worth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it goes quite a bit lower, so...
They even have like micro BTC. They have a bunch of different like sub currencies under it.
Yeah,
for the
so
smaller units.
it's not a relevant point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean it's Bitcoin that there are reasons to pay it, I guess is all I really have to say.
Yeah.
No.
What I was going to add on to that was I think the more worrying part of it is like how many repository or how many git config files they could actually find that had credentials in them and stuff like that. And it even says here that some users that fell victim to it have admitted to using weak passwords. So I feel like the issue is less the wiping of the git repositories. That's more of just a consequence of like bad security practices. So they obviously don't go into too much detail on which repositories specifically were hit. I'm guessing it's probably more smaller ones. Like I would hope that larger companies that are using Git wouldn't have like something silly like their Git config files public with credentials in them, or
Yeah, I mean, part of this comes down to how do you manage your credentials in general. Now, the ideal case is you put it in a secret store and you access that whenever you need them.
yeah,
But most people aren't going to be running like a secret server that can do that for them. So then the other thing that's commonly done is they'll just be put in environment variables, which are then read off your configs. Like there are ways about, but like they aren't just straightforward. There's no like environment variables are reasonably easy to access, like in code. But then you have to always remember to set them. Like it is a bit of a hassle. So it's definitely not uncommon for people to commit or include passwords in their source at some level. Even if it is only like a development password on a server that isn't running, maybe things can be reused or whatever. Like I mean, just it's a weird problem because like it's solved. There are solutions, but they all involve a little bit of a hassle.
yeah. So this article kind of ties nicely with I think it was the last episode we were talking about a report that a lot of Git repositories, or like there were a fair amount of Git repositories that had like access tokens and stuff in their configs, and I think this also mentions that as another method they use to compromise the repos, the access tokens. So yeah, I mean, it's just it's a cool like
It's
it's
a
something
reminder not to do this, but
it is.
the attack itself is frankly kind of fun.
I mean, I haven't really heard of it before, and I never really thought of it as a ransom strategy. But
Not as
I
a
guess,
ransom strategy. I mean, like I've definitely seen it to try and exfiltrate like company data, just looking for those private repos.
Yeah, but not corrupting them to try to get a ransom.
Yeah,
That's
not the ransom aspect. I haven't seen or heard before. Never really thought of it.
I mean, okay. I think ransom's always the most interesting, like, criminal component to this type of stuff. Like, I mean, was it the Ashley Madison where people like had their passwords or stuff like that, or actually just people? What was the scareware where people were just going through old database dumps and like finding people, being like, "Oh, I hacked you. I've got your password. Give me $200 and I'll not."
Yeah,
hack you.
they were emailing people their plain text passwords and stuff, saying like, if you don't pay me this much, I'll publish this all online or something like that. I remember hearing about stories like that, like targeted phishing campaigns using database dumps.
Yeah, well, I think they've given it the name credential stuffing now.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
think is that credential stuffing? Is that what
I
you
believe
said?
so. Yeah, credential stuffing.
Credential stuffing is usually like when you take the compromised credentials and try it against
And just try and get? Okay, I thought it was also being used sometimes now to include when you just use it in, like in the email, getting it from whatever database, but you could be correct. Maybe I'm just misapplying the term.
I mean, either way, though, yeah. The point being is just that I'm always fascinated by these ransom types. That like some of these are just genuinely clever, and it might have been a dude who's like, okay, I can get access to these, but most of them are crap. So maybe I can just make money off this in a simple way, Like,
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of new ransom techniques kind of coming out. And just follow up there. You are correct. Credential stuffing is just the using it against other servers. It doesn't include the phishing attack or the email attack. So yeah, no, you're correct. I've either just misapplied the term or heard it misused, whatever. But yeah, like in terms of the ransom, we're definitely seeing that a lot more often. Like a lot newer attacks coming out with this ransom. 'Cause, I mean, ransomware wasn't really a thing even 10 years ago. Like I
Well, there
can't.
wasn't cryptocurrencies, The
Well, there was
cryptocurrencies really changed it.
oh, what was it? Liberty coin? Like it's not a cryptocurrency. Is it
Yeah,
Liberty
Liberty
coin?
Reserve. You talking about
Yes, Liberty Reserve.
Yeah, that was the and it worked sometimes. It was just hard to make it anonymous in any way, shape, or form. Really, it kind of worked, but
Yeah, but I
it's
mean, like at that time, there was Liberty Reserve that definitely was used in that capacity.
yeah, no, but that is the interesting point, is that ransom nowadays it's not even just ransomware, the malware, that encrypts everything and wants money. It's it's transformed into finding creative ways to ransom people when the information necessarily isn't that valuable for you to continue to use in other attacks, but it is of value to try and ransom people at.
Yeah.
And I guess kind of a question for you, Auntie, is the reason that those kinds of attacks are becoming more popular because it's starting to become known that these ransoms are actually getting paid more often than they were before?
Yeah, typically. I mean, it depends. There's been some failed ones, that I would argue don't, get much traction. But I think literally the one where it was like, I've hacked you, here's your password, I think actually got a fair amount of people, because it's when you
It's a
don't
new
understand.
attack.
Yeah, it sounds like
Yeah.
to us, it'd be like, that's so stupid. Of course, I know that that's not true. You know what I mean? But to other people who don't even touch this stuff, I guess it's always easy to forget how often we just casually know things that other people really don't even have a concept of. Database dumps and all that crap, right? I feel like that's kind of the distinction of why some of these are working so well nowadays, because again, people will pay, and if you do it lowest, that's what Z was saying earlier. If you do it low enough, even normal people will pay it. If you're gonna tell me for $50, I'm not gonna ruin your life or livelihood or whatever. That's a small price to pay. You know, that's relatively a small price to pay for anyone.
Yeah, and for some people, it's also like, just in case, even if they don't buy it, well, I mean, it's only $50. I mean, they can afford to just toss that out and not, if it works, great. If it's not actually needed, well, whatever. It was only $50, but it adds up when you're able to hit, millions of people with that email. And on that, I mean, I don't come out of like a really tech savvy family or anything. But this was the one time I actually had my mom call me up, she had got that email and just asked me is that legitimate? Didn't seem like it to her because of some of the claims they were making, and she's barely on dial up, so definitely not watching too many videos on there. But but she still called me up. That was one of the few times where it's she wasn't sure that was a scam or not. And my sister actually did the same, and she's a more interesting case because when we were in high school, I taught her about Linux. So she might not be the most tech savvy, but she's the type of person where if something goes wrong, she knows how to format and reinstall Linux on her machine.
Damn, there you go.
That's the lesson, dude.
Might not know everything else, but can reinstall her operating system.
There you go.
And I think she had actually emailed me asking about the same thing. People that have some level of tech savviness that aren't at our level, that actually understand how it all works, but even they'll kind of start to fall for that one because the passwords are legitimate. They've got some information that they shouldn't have. That gives a level of credence. Yeah.
It feels too real because, again, how else would someone know that? To a normal person, you would go, well, yeah, what the hell? How would someone know this? How would they know my password if they haven't hacked me? Which is totally, if you
fair conclusion, yeah.
That's for a normal person, that's the most logical conclusion. Well, they must have hacked me. So I totally get it. That's the sad part, is it's people sometimes in this industry are these people are such idiots, and I think that they're convincing enough now, and that's why ransom is actually made such a huge surge now. I mean, if you look at also the called e-whoring, where they tend to be a chick or something, flirt with some dude, get them send nasty pics or whatever, and then they'll go and blackmail them and threaten to send it to their family and whatnot unless they pay like $100, right? And that's a huge thing now. That's what people are doing all the time, and they do it because it makes money and because people will feel that ping of knowing like, oh shit, this could all be ruined, or kind of circling back for $100, $50, I can not ruin my life. you know like it's a small
Yeah.
price to pay.
I mean, though, I do want to point out one thing when it comes to ransoms, and like personally, I've kind of thought through. So my thing was more. I don't want to go into details on the podcast, but you guys know about my work over in Africa, and ransom was a concern. Like kidnapping and ransom was a concern with that, and I kind of just came to the realization that's never really worth it to pay the ransoms. Just because you don't know that they're going to actually follow through with what they say. Like, they might still go and release those pictures and destroy your life anyhow.
I was about to ask, how honorable generally are ransom actors in what they say? Like, if you pay the ransom, how often is it that they actually do follow through with their promises? Is there like a stat on that?
So I don't know. Actually, maybe Ant would know better than me, but as far as I'm aware, actually, a lot of them do still give you the ability to recover, like with the ransomware that's encrypting files. Just because, if it gets out that they don't, then, or fewer people are going to be paying. Obviously, a lot of people aren't really able to look it up once their machine's actually been compromised like that. But I believe at this point, a lot of them are honorable. But the other thing is just every ransom that you pay is going to be used to further more ransom campaigns.
Yeah.
So the only solution is just not to pay ransom, regardless.
Yeah, it's kind of like that "we don't negotiate with terrorists" stick.
Yeah.
So to be fair with you, I've actually, without going into too much detail, I've worked on a lot of this stuff actually, and you kind of get a baseline. I don't think there's any stats that I can provide because it's more anecdotal information, but like ransomware, except for a few variants, have been. It's software, so it's going to decrypt if provided the correct information. The bad part is if you handle like they have bad infrastructure crap, that the server goes down or something for decryption. Those things happen quite often, so it's not always reliable. But typically, ransomware is going to be mostly reliable. Even the FBI, I think, just said just pay the ransomware. There's nothing you can do. It's cryptographically secure. However, I will say, in fairness, the actual ransom demands, like by a regular bad guy, like a high amount, if they've actually compromised a network, they've actually like they're advanced, they're a known group or something like that, like there's a good chance that they will hold true to their word, because if they go around and they go and release the information anyways, that defeats their business model, because then security researchers will go and say, see, these guys were just going to release it anyways, so you shouldn't bother paying them. If they keep to their word, though, the chances of them continuing to make money in the future is pretty high, right? Because people can then vouch and say, yeah, I got my shit back. But for the
that's a
most
very
part,
good point.
but for like personal attacks like that, like again, the e-whoring stuff, no, I would never bother, because to be quite honest with you, yeah, you have no chance of really guaranteeing that, because these idiots, they can go and keep harassing you, and more often than not, things like that and DDoS, pay me to stop DDoSing you, which was really popular for honestly
Chat groups.
yeah, like it was popular though for a while, and people would pay up. Like Proton Mail even did it. They paid some really known DDoS ransom group, and what happened? They ended up getting they paid, I think, like 5,000 or something, and then of course the guys didn't stop the DDoS and asked for more money. So your mileage, you know what I mean? Like your mileage kind of varies, but if you're like a big enterprise and you're targeted by someone who obviously knows what they're doing, it's probably in their best interest to work correctly. But yeah, I the amount of people I've talked to about this, there is no guarantee, dude. Once someone has your information, they can do whatever the hell they want, and they have no real obligation. It's not like they're under contract, You go, okay, Mr. Bad Guy,
Take them to court over it.
Yeah, he ransomed my network, and he didn't give my stuff back. Like, oh, well, that's a breach of contract. But like, no, you have no. Even law enforcement can very rarely do much about it. Honestly,
Especially with the internet has no borders, right? Often they don't even have jurisdiction to do shit about it, even if they wanted to.
Yeah,
you're going to get
some dude in Russia or something's holding your network hostage, and you're like, well, can't the police do? What are they going to do? Like, what are they? And that's where you got to, hopefully you set up your network good enough, man. That's the one thing I always tell people, like, what can I do? make sure you're storing backups correctly. Don't just store it on the same server or on the same machine. Or for the love of God, make sure on your network it's not something they can get to easily. Where I think like I don't know who someone I was talking to that there was some infection a while back where they got their backup servers completely wiped too, or not wiped, or encrypted because they were passing the backups like some weird plain text format. So the password was actually stored in a local file that was running the backups. So all the attacker had to do was literally go pull the password and log into the server and encrypt everything manually. Like
Awesome.
so, like it's just people are so dude. Just have a good network. Do your best not to get pwned. Like that's really it. Don't pay them if you can.
Mature
Otherwise,
security infrastructure.
Yeah,
Pay in advance so that you don't have to pay later.
dude,
Yeah.
that's it. Pay in advance or pay later. That's really it.
Yeah, because I mean, like I said, I like as a general principle, I don't support paying ransoms at all because they only go to kind of furthering more attacks anyhow. Even assuming they work with you and they do everything, it's
Mhm.
better off just do what you can to prevent them. If it happens, it happens. Deal with it. No, don't try and weasel out with the ransom. That's kind of my take on all of that.
Well, and one final parting note before we probably transition is the other people who do want to pay, they go, I have no choice, my network, blah blah. Like they should probably realize that if you pay it, these decryption tools made by these dudes are shit. Like garbage tier. And if you're running it over like a lot of these networks, like hundreds of servers, dude, it corrupts the shit out of files. Like half the time, it doesn't even decrypt them properly. Like the code, like the quality is garbage. And so, like, just be aware that that doesn't mean it does. It's gonna, and it also isn't gonna take just a day. Usually, like I'm pretty confident most companies that are hit by this type of attack, like we've compromised your network and give us, $1 billion or whatever, right? Like most times you are going to have hundreds of servers that it's going to take you weeks or even months to decrypt all that. So is it better just to fucking figure it out from there, or do you take the chance and hopefully you can decrypt it, but if you're a big business, can you lose that much money per day, while you're trying to get this Perl script to decrypt your network or something?
I just love the way you just savagely said garbage tier.
And
I'm
then
just
Pearl.
I mean, I wasn't saying anything directly. I was just saying, this is how I get something shit. Like, you want to see our garbage tier tool? Huh?
It
I'm
was just
just
funny the
saying.
way you said that, yeah.
I mean, they're really good, actually. I'm just kidding, guys. Don't come after me, please. Your
I
tools
mean,
are great.
yeah, that's a fair point of not paying ransom, but at the same time, a lot of the people that make those kinds of decisions in businesses and stuff, they probably don't share that perspective. They don't,
No, but
whatever's the
I
cheapest
mean, and
method.
that's kind of the problem too, is, everybody needs to not pay ransom. Otherwise, it's still effective. So that's
Yep.
is specifically why I make the mention, is because it needs to be something that, like, if people pay ransoms, it's going to be profitable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's basically it, though. If it doesn't make money, they wouldn't do it. But as Z said, you should pay the ransom 24/7 all the time if possible. Give them extra money, tip
Totally.
them if you want to
Tip
make.
them.
Yeah,
Give 'em a little
tipping culture.
Give 'em a
Make
little
sure
tip.
it's 15%.
Yeah, 15% or your last 10 servers aren't getting decrypted, dude.
So yeah, we'll move on to some defensive stuff. So
Well, another place
so-
where you might want to use maybe not ransom, but botnet could be useful in some CAPTCHA breaking.
Yeah.
So I kind of debate whether or not I want to talk about this on the podcast, but I figured I'd jump into it. It's
Really?
related a bit to security. I've spent a good amount of time breaking CAPTCHAs. I've definitely hired a typer team in the past and all of that. And I mean, one of the most common techniques for a CAPTCHA breaking is if you can't trivially write a like OCR or something to actually read it, just farm it out to cheap labor online. You can pay like 50 cents, have 1,000 CAPTCHAs broken for you.
Death by CAPTCHA, 2 CAPTCHA.
Yeah, I mean, those obviously, like, those better known services are more expensive. Like, I think Death by CAPTCHA is like $2 per 1,000 or something.
Yeah. Still
but,
pretty cheap considering.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely adds up when you're breaking thousands of CAPTCHAs a day, though.
Yeah, it's true.
That said, I mean, So what this thing kind of is suggesting here, premise of the paper, start including secret or information that only the user would know in the CAPTCHA. So their example ones are you display, letters in the alphabet or some letters in the alphabet. It's on page 9 where they actually have an example of what it looks like.
Oh, apparently it didn't. Oh, right. I forgot the number pad doesn't work on this stupid thing. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so if we zoom in on, I think you can, or you might have to, yeah. Either way, like they basically just show you the characters, like the top one. They're showing you the characters in the password, and then you just have to click which characters are in your password. Yeah, choose all the characters, symbols that appear in your password. So you click them.
Sounds terrible. What the hell?
Well, so they did address that a little bit. So it's so it's not like leaking your password or anything like that. It's
right, but that's so weird.
like they say, to quote them, they say the real password is only used in the user authentication plus interactions that do not appear at any step of the Turing test. For the server side, it can still hash the password immediately. And then all the challenge literal data is coming from the user's post requests rather than from the servers.
Yeah, so this one in particular is being used during like a login attempt type deal. So that's why they'd have access to the password, not because they're storing it in a way they can recover it. But the general principle here is using information that the people typing wouldn't know. And that's also where this kind of falls apart. Like, they kind of make this assumption that the typer team couldn't or shouldn't know the password. And yeah, passwords should be kept secret, but these are spamming accounts. These are accounts they're using to spam or something like that.
I was like, that's kind of a flimsy requirement.
Yeah, so actually, I ran into this back in 2006. Okay. Back when I was seeing that, I actually ran into it like that. It wasn't exactly like this. But their secret information was more contextual. It was a game, a browser-based game. That I was writing a bot for, and it displayed captchas, and they had included usernames as part of the captcha. Like, you have to, you'd solve the captcha on the basis of what your username was, and it would it would expose your username. So the way we were running at the time was that, to save money on farming things out to the actual pay team that's typing captchas, users would just kind of log in and they would be able to type captchas for other people running the same bot. So it's kind of like the shared workload. So then they would be able to find out all the other users of the bot by looking at those captchas. So in that sense, it was information that you would want to keep secret from the other people or from the typers. That just pushed the model to being a lot more paid. It wasn't all that big of a deal because nobody cared if the typer team knew who it was. And similar with the password, I don't think anybody will actually care about the passwords like a spam account. Like, there are a few cases where the password
is probably randomly generated anyway. Yeah.
Or it's all the same across all of them, something that everybody knows.
Yeah. I mean, like, so there was two approaches. So there was that one with the password where they have to like select the characters from it. And I did want to quickly mention they did have another datagram approach where I think they had like a hidden field in the post HTTP header that included like a secret. So, they would have to pass that back and forth. But again, same issue. Like, if needed, that...
well, I mean, that value, though... So, I'm going to be honest, I tried reading that section, I just didn't get what they were trying to describe.
It was a bit, it was worded really weird. The entire paper is like, there's typos and stuff in it. And
yeah,
stuff, so it's weird.
It's a weird to read paper, so that's why I did go into it. But, I mean, if it's as you say, there's no reason why you can't pass that off to a typer team.
It'd just be maybe, like a little bit more money because you might have like a specialized request or whatever.
Well, so the way that usually works is that you build the UI that the typer team will use to fill out the captchas.
Oh, okay.
So you can display, like I had mentioned the username thing, you can display the username as part of the UI and just pass it in there. You build the infrastructure. I think Death by Captcha and some of those have like the built-in API and stuff, like some of those bigger services that you can send to. But when you're actually hiring a team, like you build the API or you build the UI that they use.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just trying to figure out here, like, what is the big sell here that I'm missing? I feel like I'm missing the plot here.
What
I
they
think it's just an
want,
idea. Like,
like what their goal is if they have some secret that you can't share with the typer team, you can't farm it out to a typing team.
So
but
they're
that
talking
just
about
isn't
literally a
possible.
password. Is they're like, oh, if you don't.
I
Yeah,
don't think
and
it's
then they're
possible,
taking it as
really.
the password, and it's like that's not. Yeah, like I
But
I agree. I don't really think there's any secret information unless it's like, and what's your home address?
social
The
security number.
the only thing I can really think of is potentially having some sort of hardware tag to identify with, but browsers don't have that kind of access. So,
They should not have that type of access.
and they shouldn't have that type of access. So I mean, it's just like, if you could like have a, a unique identifier of some hardware piece, you could definitely tie that to an account. But like,
Um,
we don't want to give that kind of
No,
access
but
away.
that's not really a solution to CAPTCHAs though. Like to where CAPTCHAs are for automating or for preventing automated access.
Well, you could have them in substitute as captchas, or well, I guess then you could still
Not
have a
really. You
machine
just
with an account.
register.
Yeah,
Yeah, like it's not. It seems
but
like what
yeah,
you're suggesting solves a slightly different issue. But
yeah,
in terms of just like there isn't a lot that you wouldn't be willing to share. Like, I mean, these cyber teams are basically like you basically just farm things out to them. It's not like you build up much of a personal relationship with all the typers, so they're going to be able to figure much out about you.
I would argue it like this. I don't think it's going to make a difference that, like,
Oh, I don't think so. This isn't
like,
going to
yeah,
happen.
no,
I mean, just to be a doom and gloom guy, what I would say though is, like, most times, like, when you're farming out to one of these typer farms, like, it's for accounts that are for spam or for something that, again, if you need to solve a captcha 10,000 times, it's not for some secretive account or something like that. Like, you don't care. You don't
Yeah,
really
that's
care.
why I don't think password will be the thing. But that's also why I did mention the username thing, because it was some that people didn't want it to be known that they were cheating on this game. So the
Sure, that's
username,
fair.
like in the context, was actually useful, but we didn't care that the typers knew. It was just because of the side effect of how we ran uh kind of the credit system where you can type yourself and use this for free, more or less. It
Mhm.
was just because of that aspect of it that it mattered. And I mean, I can't think of anything that you really would want to prevent just a typer team from knowing, like, and that the application should or could know. Obviously, I wouldn't want them knowing like social insurance number or something, but the application also shouldn't know that, so it's a moot
exactly.
point.
How does reCAPTCHA do it? Does it just use, like, your link, like Google or Chrome or whatever?
Like, how does reCAPTCHA authenticate you?
Yeah, like, how does it verify? Like, I mean, I've seen they
So
still have they
it,
have click farms for that too, but
yeah, and you can farm, you can mostly farm reCAPTCHAs out. One of the issues is that they do some. You can on some sites enable the IP check, so it has to be solved on the same IP that submits the final request, which adds a little extra layer. Like I said, though, if you're building the UI with some of those, they might have something in place. Like I said, the bigger companies, but if you're building the UI, you can probably make some that'll submit the actual request from the same IP also. But that
Yeah,
is
just
kind of one of
proxy
the
it.
extra steps. Uh, to reCAPTCHA, but with reCAPTCHA, it's looking at a lot of information besides just the fact that you solved the CAPTCHA. You mentioned the Google account if you're logged in on an account, if it seems like a real account. Making more or less legitimate requests because Google knows a lot about what you do on the internet. They see all the sites you visit and all of that, or not all the sites, but they see many of the sites if they have like Google ads on them.
Yeah,
So they're able to find out kind of what you're doing. So they look at that and how human like you appear. In addition to mouse movements, and kind of like how natural your mouse movements are if it just jumps around. There are some really trivial checks at that level, though.
yeah.
yeah, I mean, most of it still doesn't seem like it's gone that far. And honestly, I don't know what the good solution is besides, I don't know. I don't even have an alternative. Like, it just all sucks.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is one thing I can kind of respect about this paper is there has been a lot of talk about like the potential for AI defeating CAPTCHAs, especially because especially Google's, I think they actually use it to train AI. So it's kind of, like kind of training what could defeat these kinds of things.
Yeah, well,
But
even the old reCAPTCHA was what they were using to read books until they were banned from digitizing. Well, not from digitizing books, but all the books that they had digitized can't be released now. But before
yeah,
they were using reCAPTCHA to read those books.
yeah. But I can kind of respect that this paper, they are trying to attack that other way of breaking CAPTCHAs, which is the farming stuff. That being said, I just don't think you can really do much with, without some serious changes in the browsers, which I don't think people would be on board with.
No,
So
I think Google's actually with reCAPTCHAs on the right track to try to prevent farming it out.
yeah,
Because the process involved would need to farm it out to another Google account, another UI, like trying to pass the reCAPTCHA is a lot more complicated than trying to pass an image over to the team.
yeah,
Like they've just introduced a level of complication into it, and I think that's kind of making it so it's not worth the effort.
yeah. Okay, so do we want to talk about some kernel stuff?
Let's jump
No,
in.
we can
Get a bit
skip
more
this
fun?
one.
No, I've been waiting for this one. This one's more fun. So yeah, so this contributes to part of the title. That's, what is it, 37 or 30?
30,
Yeah, 37.
yeah.
No, 36. 36-year-old bug.
It's an old bug.
Yeah, so it's in UFS file system, and they basically you could leak up to 3 bytes of kernel stack, and it's basically,
Well, so you could leak more, kind of.
you
3
could.
bytes at a time, and you can kind of chain it to read further along. If you automated it, because the memory doesn't change very often. But sorry, go on with your description.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, so the leak happens because of padding, and padding is probably the most common form of information leak in kernel stuff, because it's just, it's so common, and it's something that the developer doesn't necessarily think about when they're writing the code. So yeah, so like you said, it's the offset that in the kernel stack that is disclosed is a function of the file name size. So could with your control of the file name size, you could control where the data is getting leaked from on the stack. So chaining that 3-byte leak, you could create a 254-byte leak if you chained it right. And yeah, so the bug was originally put into was discovered and has been there since 1982. 4.1 BST. So
Damn.
It's been there for a while. I mean, that's what's impressive here. Right? I mean, these little bugs and old code, nobody's really looking at. I mean, I don't know how frequently this code's actually even modified before this.
Probably not at all.
Like, I would
wouldn't be
imagine it's
surprised.
not really being touched because it works. It's doing what it needs to do.
Yeah.
And everybody ignores it for 30 years.
Yeah, but the one point that I think we should take away is let me just see. It's in this sentence, yeah. And it's likely present in every Unix or Unix-like system that uses UFS FFS. So it's fixed in FreeBSD. But how many other systems are using the same file system that still have the bug that hasn't fixed it? So, there's a potential information leak that can be weaponized on a bunch of different
going to use
Linux
this
kernels.
on the PS4?
Yep. No, I don't think you have access to this file system in PS4.
Fair enough.
Probably not. If it does though, yeah, sure, why not? I don't think you can though. But yeah, information disclosure is becoming even more of an important vulnerability for attackers, especially FreeBSD just recently introduced SMAP. So, if you have to fake a kernel object or something, you can't leave it in userland. So an info leak becomes a lot more valuable. And that ability to be able to control where on the stack the info leak happens from is actually even more important than just being able to expand a window. Because basically how you control what data you leak when it's a stack leak is you have to do like a stack spray. So before you trigger the information leak, you have to like call a function that'll try to get data that you want, like your target data, into that window that you're leaking from. So the fact that you can control where that window is by the file name size is like a really, really good factor for an attacker to be able to control where they're reading from on the stack. Because you don't have to worry so much about how your stack spray is happening because you can control where it's being read from. So I thought that was a really, really funny part of it. And, you know, I do wonder if this bug was used in the wild before it was discovered. Because they said here, like, amazingly, nobody noticed till now. And when I read that, I'm like, no, you didn't notice until now.
Yeah, I
You know,
mean, it's hard to
probably been
say
known.
because usually, like, if it's getting used in the wild, we kind of find out about it just by looking at the attacks that are happening, like, the malware researchers and stuff. They kind of see those exploits being used, and it's like, okay, this is using an O-day, and if it was being used in the wild, it very well may have been. It would have been used in fairly targeted attacks, so have never kind of popped up on anybody's radar until now. But that's also the thing, it is such a subtle bug, kind of, in just the particular file
3 bytes
system.
too, like, it's pretty small.
Yeah, like, I could understand it just not being noticed until now.
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem with information leaks as opposed to something like a use after free is information leaks are not noisy. It's very rare that you'll get information leaks that have like instability and will crash anything, because it's just they're just way more subtle bugs. It's just like padding in this case that wasn't accounted for.
Yeah, they do less. Like, I mean, you're not getting code execution from it. You're just getting information, usually. So because of the lack of side effects, like they are more subtle. So I could believe that this wasn't found until now. Like, I could also believe that it's being used. Like, if you told me either way, I'd believe it.
Yeah.
There's no way we can really know without any evidence that was being used that it, absolutely wasn't.
Well, to be fair, if and you said this isn't specific just to FreeBSD, right? This could probably be ported over to different systems, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much any system that could be using UFS and FFS could be vulnerable to this, because especially when you're talking about file systems, there's a lot of overlap between different distros. Like anything like that, right? Like, it's just that there's probably other distros if they have this file system that you can exploit it on.
I mean, I feel like it's, if it was just FreeBSD, like how big is FreeBSD to justify, even finding something like that, if you're a big bad guy.
At the same time, FreeBSD gets, like, I mean, the PS4, like, it gets used in some really sensitive areas, like routers would be another big one. If it was just FreeBSD, like, FreeBSD has it might not have a big market share, but it has a very significant usage.
Yeah, I think it's used a lot more in like production servers and stuff like that. Like, it's a popular, like, it's not a popular home operating system by any means. It's not many people are running FreeBSD as their main desktop OS, but it's big for like infrastructure.
No, it definitely still gets used. I just would wonder, it'd be actually fascinating to, see what impact that could bring. Because a lot of the people I know that use FreeBSD are just guys that are like deep into it. Like they do everything they can to secure their system. They monitor the crap out of it. So the other hard part is like, I wonder what the real scope of it is. But especially if it's gone 30 plus years.
Yeah, well, it's worth noting. I mean, FreeBSD is only 25 years old. This predates FreeBSD.
So I wonder if it's been discovered already, and someone's either hoarded it or doesn't realize the full impact of what they already have, or I don't know. Like, there's a lot of different things that could be going on there.
And just as a side note, I've tried running FreeBSD in a VM, not on my main, not as like my main OS. I hate it so much. FreeBSD sucks. Like,
I used to be a FreeBSD user for a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And then you realize there were other operating systems. Or...
They don't even have.
I actually even ran it on a laptop at one point, as my laptop OS.
They don't even have Nano installed by default. Like that's
just... are you admitting on the podcast that you're a Nano user?
A Nano user?
Dude,
we're not even getting into Vim or Emacs here. Like, you use Nano?
I regularly attend the Church of Nano every Sunday. So
I feel like that's how I judge people. If you at least use like Vim or Emacs, I'll be like, all right, I'm not gonna babble you on it, but Nano,
come on, you can't be talking bad on Nano, dude. Nano's got you can do a lot with Nano. You can do line numbers and everything. You just gotta read the Nano Bible. That's all.
Nano Bible. No,
some people call it the manual, but the faithful call it the Bible. Yeah.
The Bible. Anyways, I'm gonna hop off the podcast, gents.
Okay.
Sorry, it's a little bit early, but I look forward to next week. So you two have a good time.
All right, no problem.
All right, see you.
Yeah. So we can move off the FreeBSD stuff. It was a really cool bug, and sad that we won't know if it was ever used in the wild.
Well, I mean, we might find out at some point.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
I mean, if we haven't heard about it, probably not. But yeah, so moving on from there onto you only propagate once. Kind of playing on the other algorithm, you only look once, or YOLO.
Yeah, so one thing I thought was interesting about this quickly, because I imagine you're going to be able to run this down because I'm not too familiar with this. Like, I tried reading it. It's a pretty complex paper. It's pretty long as well. But we've talked a lot on this show about breaking DNNs, adversarial attacks, and this is how to defend against them. So that's
which is why I want to include it. That said, I tried reading this one. It's definitely kind of beyond me. It's one of those things where you read, it's like I recognize some of those words.
Yeah. It's a really complex.
I mean, the idea here is we talked. I think it was even last stream. It's about how you've got the neural networks that are being trained on data, but they're being trained on good, clean data. And as soon as you start adding in some adversarial modification to it, you end up with a misrecognition, something going wrong with it. Yeah. And this is kind of and they found here that if you do train with those slightly modified images, adding in those seemingly imperceptible to human changes, just train it with that type data too. It works out a little bit better for not falling to those types of issues. So obviously training with adversarial images is a good thing. But one of the issues is that in doing in how the networks work, you kind of have your forward and backwards propagation of the data. The images go in, get your output, but they'll also calculate from, as I understand, the output, they'll calculate they call it the gradient back. Quite frankly, I don't know this. I don't know how the gradient
descent works. They use a lot of terms that are just if you're not super into AI, you're just they repurpose terms into their own meaning, their own nomenclature.
Obviously there's reasons why they've adopted those terms, but this wasn't kind of the whole neural network explosion that happened. Was my AI class in university is really where most of my AI knowledge comes from, and it was just before kind of it really exploded onto the scene. Obviously it was around before that, but so my AI knowledge on this specifically is really lacking. I don't know how to describe this for the podcast. I'm not going to make an attempt to go into that. But essentially the idea here is to say that it's fairly computationally expensive when it's needing to do these forward and backwards calculations, is how I understand it. And what they've basically done here with this algorithm is they're basically found that most of the information is coming out of just the first layer of the neural network. So they're doing only the calculation at that point, and only running it through at the beginning, giving them about a 5x speed up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to bring up, because we do talk about all these little changes that come in there, and this is a defense that somebody's looking into and a way to kind of improve performance on it. Unfortunately, it's definitely
High
beyond,
level.
so I can't really, give a good description, and in this case, I don't even want to try. I just wanted to bring up the fact, like, it is there. The description's going to have the link to it if this is kind of more in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, it's just we spend a lot of time on this show kind of wrecking AI. So when a paper comes out and kind of trying to defend against those kinds of attacks, I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah,
Would have felt kind of disingenuous to only talk about the bads and not any of the good research, like not
well, I
good and
mean,
bad.
it's kind of like the same reason why I like pulling up any sort of new mitigation that's coming out, because it's just, it's worth paying attention to what's coming out, so that if we do decide to, look at something that's using AI, you have some background to be like, okay, well, are they doing these mitigations? Obviously, I don't have any plans to really look at this deeply into AI, but
No,
and especially since this is more about the algorithms being used to do the training, not so much about like an actual attack. Just here's how we're going to create adversarial data to train with. But yeah, like I said, it's a defense against one of the issues that we've talked about a bunch on this podcast.
Yeah. But going back to being more of a cynic, we do have the risks of WebGL paper to talk about.
I like this paper. This was fun.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, practicality of it, I don't know. Maybe. So the gist of this is attacks using WebGL. So, are not really attacks. What they generally focus on with this paper is looking at like botnets that might use WebGL, or like websites, like cryptocurrency mining using WebGL in the browser, doing password cracking in the browser. So the idea here being that you build up a botnet of visitors or users of your site, and then you use their computational power to mine currency, to do password cracking, things like that, for like a distributed system.
Yeah, it seemed the main focus was the Bitcoin mining.
Yeah, I mean, it spent some time at the beginning on the password, but I mean, the gist of this is, one is that it's for stealthy hash cracking. This has been looked at before. They include a link to another paper from MWR Labs that just basically says, in WebGL 1.0, there's too many limitations to actually do it, at least in the way that they wanted to. So what this paper ends up talking about is, one, how they implemented a GPU-based, WebGL MD5 calculation. And to be clear, the benefit of, obviously in the browser, you could use JavaScript, high CPU usage, like that's already a thing that's been done to mine cryptocurrency, and even hash cracking is doing the CPU. WebGL is giving you access to do GPU calculations. So that's at least a little bit more stealthy, and that's one of the aspects that they looked at, is what type issues did users who were impacted by this actually notice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really easy to sum this paper up, as they looked at how to implement both the MD5 calculation to do hash cracking, to mine Monero, and to mine Litecoin. And then they looked at how they can distribute that, like having a server to give out mining jobs to all the different clients and things of that nature. But the focus of it was on the performance there. So they did find that WebGL, definitely outperformed, as you would expect, CPU password cracking on MD5. It was on par for Monero, and with Litecoin, it was about half the performance.
Okay.
But I mean, it's an interesting premise, like, to use WebGL that way. Totally makes sense that you'd want to go about it, just because CPU isn't the best way to go about it, and using the GPU is a lot more stealthy. People are less likely to notice their GPU is using up a lot of resources, because, while they're just sitting there browsing the internet, not much is really happening on the GPU anyhow, unlike the CPU, which is a lot more noticeable.
Yeah. So I did have a few points that I wanted to bring up. So, the paper mainly focuses on hash cracking and crypto mining. What my personal curiosity was being able to abuse the WebGL APIs to perhaps attack the GPU directly. Because, let's be honest, GPU drivers are written horribly. So I do wonder if, exposing WebGL to the browser could open up another attack surface on the PC itself. Not necessarily carrying out botnet attacks, but to actually get a foothold in the system. I don't
That's a
think
fair
the paper
question, but
talks about it.
you're kind of limited in terms of the API that's actually exposed through WebGL.
Yeah, I don't know too much about WebGL, so that was a personal curiosity of mine. I don't know how feasible an attack like that would be.
Yeah, you're kind of always working through the WebGL API. So that kind of limits your ability to actually make the low-level calls.
Okay.
You're able to get things to execute, like certain computations to execute, usually done through the shaders. Is what the report or what the paper tend to talk about, was using the shaders.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't used WebGL, but just looking here, it's generally you've got these functions that you can call. And it's reasonably limited. So in terms of doing a binary attack against that, there might be something that is exposed through WebGL, through that API. But just due to the limited aspect of it, I wouldn't see that as at least a prime target. Maybe you can start fuzzing those endpoints and actually find something, though.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Oh, go ahead.
Another point I did want to bring up, but it will lead into a bit of a discussion. So, did you want to bring up anything else?
Yeah, I'll just toss in there that they do have a defense section, and I swear this was they did this whole paper, and whoever reviewed it was just like, "Hey, you guys should maybe talk about defense a little bit," and they just kind of tossed in a couple cheap thoughts about how they defend by having an extension. Yeah, that disables it. Or detecting an increase in bitwise operations inside shader code.
I felt the exact same way. I was like, this paper is really cool. And then you get to the conclusion section. It's just like, oh, yeah, just use an extension to disable WebGL. It's like,
to be fair, it would be effective. Okay. But it just feels like, with the rest of the paper, just felt, as you said, just out of place. It's
tacked on.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the discussion I wanted to get into a little bit was... I wanted to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about crypto mining. What are your thoughts about it in regards to, I know there's a discussion about it being a potential substitute to ads.
Well, that was talking about the BAT token, basic attention token they were using. Or sorry, no, I'm thinking of a different topic. You're meaning just having websites mining on your computer?
Yeah, I mean, do you think it is okay that WebGL can be used for mining? Because I think mining would actually be a nice solution to the ad problem, right? Nobody likes ads. Everyone hates them. Everyone uses ad blockers. Ad companies are making less money, so their ads have to get more intrusive.
Yeah, but mining is literally eating up my power. That's the cost of mining, is it's using power, and across different places, power has different values. So it might not be all that expensive for me in Saskatchewan, but somebody, somewhere else might be paying a lot more for power. It's just because of that inequality that I can't support it, at least not directly, but at the same time, let's assume that wasn't the case. Let's just assume that it was just a little bit of performance loss on your machine, for the bit while you're viewing it. If every site's doing it, that's going to add up. I mean, I want to find another solution to ads. I think I think what needs to happen is something else needs to be discovered rather than trying to hold on to this old system.
Yeah, ads are going to die. They're just, I don't even know how they're still alive, honestly, with all the ad.
I mean, I could see more movement towards more, it's being called native advertisement. If somebody were to sponsor us to talk about something. I mean, I don't mind those types of ads, to be honest. As long as the person's being legitimate and like reviewing something, like not just reading off a list, but being legitimate about that. Those types of ads I think are fine. So that type of ad can live on, but like the banner ads or pop-ups, I guess we don't really have the pop-ups much anymore, but that sort
Even
of
just
thing.
inline ads, they're annoying, right? The ones that'll play like
Yeah.
videos automatically with sound, and it's just like,
Oh yeah, it's a video with an ad every minute for 2 hours.
oh, it just sucks. Like,
So I
I,
mean,
I,
on that, cryptocurrency, I'll be honest, at first I actually thought it was an interesting idea until I realized like the power difference, like payment between people. That's kind of where I stopped supporting cryptocurrency as a ad replacement. But I do kind of like the idea in that the more you use the website, the more they get from it. They're being paid based on how often you're actually visiting and using the site. Like there's a connection between that. It's not just getting eyeballs on, it's not impressions or clicks or whatever. Like there's a connection there. And I think that's a positive thing.
I mean, what I would be cryptocurrency mining as an alternative to ads. So if power is an issue, if you don't want to have any crypto mining going on in your system, then you can get ads. And if you don't want ads, but you're okay with, some power consumption or whatever, then you allow the Bitcoin mining. I think that would be a fair alternative for those who would be willing to sacrifice that. Though that is a fair point that, the more tabs you have open and stuff, the more power is being used. So for somebody like me who has had like 150 tabs open at one point, probably wouldn't be too good if every tab was doing
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I'm sure tabs though will be suspended. Like I know Chrome will suspend tabs, so they can't execute stuff. So that's not like obviously some are going to be, but thinking about it, that's a really easily solved really easily solved problem. Also, now that I think about it, is they can just suspend when they're in the background. Yeah, or you can hope they would suspend when they're in the background at least.
Yeah. So, I mean, there is like referring to the name of the paper, the risks of WebGL. There are definitely risks. I think there are some like,
I mean, there's benefits though of having WebGL. Like, I'm not going to say we should get rid of
oh,
WebGL because you
definitely,
can do GPU
yeah.
mining. 'Cause, I mean, same reason you're not getting rid of JavaScript.
As much as some people might like to. um,
Go in the browser.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I just think I wanted to bring it up because I know crypto mining is like, when you talk about JavaScript crypto miners, a lot of the like it's just a lot of people shit on it. A lot of people hate it. Like just the mention of it or like it's
Yeah, I'm
shit. But
definitely
then I
not
think
on
there are
a.
benefits to it, potential benefits.
I think like there's room for it. Like I've mentioned the power issues. My big thing, like I think that it can be used responsibly.
Okay.
But so many things are like, oh yeah, let's just use 100% CPU. Let's get as much as we can. And then that's the other thing. The few seconds that you're on a website or even minutes, it's not actually making all that much currency. It's
That's
just
fair.
not worth it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, even ads considering, not everyone uses ad blockers, so maybe, you know, that would be an
Well,
interesting
and ad
stat to get.
blockers do block like CoinHot, like the miners and stuff. So it's,
Okay.
I
That's
mean,
another
it's
front.
not like
Okay.
ad blockers can't block that too.
Yeah. So
And ad blockers can add or can block the you're using an ad blocker message also. So
so basically there's going to be no way to make money on websites
no,
again.
and
No.
that's where I
Like
kind of like the basic attention token. I think that's a really solid idea, and I'm really disappointed that Brave took a huge hit when they released that. But that's another topic.
yeah, save that for another day. Um yeah, so we'll talk about some tools. Oh, you took the remote. There we go. So we'll talk about the tool that ripped off the name from the NSA, InternalBlue. kind of stole the EternalBlue name from the NSA, but whatever. They
Yeah,
probably won't
I mean
sue.
it's I can get the name though, Bluetooth. And I mean
Yeah,
the NSA can't sue over it. They can't copyright or trademark. They're
hey, why not?
government. They're government. It's
Yeah,
public.
yeah. So I thought the framework was kind of interesting. I don't think we could talk too much about it because neither of us really researched Bluetooth. But one thing I noticed that they talk about their framework a little bit. So they basically, this paper talks about a framework they created that can allow them to like do some monkey patching, some binary patching, and like has like a suite of features for experimentation for working with Bluetooth chips. And the one feature that I thought was really weird was they mentioned they could modify memory regions in
Yeah,
I don't know.
so that actually
Yeah,
comes
that are
from the
read-only memory. Like that's so weird. Like
yeah.
read-only memory, but they could modify it. So how does that work?
Well, obviously the system's able to modify memory even though they call it read only.
Uh,
Because I mean,
titles don't
read
mean
only
anything anymore.
sometimes used to mean like it would literally like burn the bridge, so you couldn't write it anymore.
Yeah.
Nowadays, that tends to just be like
You
um,
should only read from this. Please don't write to it.
yeah, like
Like
usually
it's
there'll be
yeah.
some sort of protection in there, but yeah. So there was a like just in the what is the host HCI host controller interface? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Being able
so
to send
that's what this
arbitrary
thing's
commands.
based on. Is there are several commands that are just kind of built into the firmware of these Broadcom uh, Bluetooth chipsets that include reading memory, writing memory, executing memory.
Yeah.
So like that's all there. Just oh yeah, it's right on the page. Send arbitrary HCI commands to the chip. I'm talking
Yeah.
about run arbitrary code in the context of the firmware. Um, the the basis of this is on that. Obviously, it requires super user rights, so this isn't like some big attack on the system. You
No.
need to be an admin or need to be root, whatever.
They
Because
did
my
mention
first
how
thought.
they
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say they did mention how they discovered RCE though with their framework. So I'll talk about that after
Yeah,
you
the
make your point.
RC is actually kind of interesting, but
Yeah.
I was just going to mention like my first thought when I read that you could modify memory and like execute was how is that not an issue? But yeah, it requires that you're already an admin on it. The
Mhm.
RCE though, as you're going to get into there is well, I guess I'll let you describe it since you brought it up first.
Well, I didn't read too much into it. I noticed from what I understood, it was basically an out of bounds read on like a handler table they had for opcodes. So you could kind
Yeah,
of yeah.
they filled in so your opcode was 00 and then a number for whatever index it's supposed to read. So they only implemented through to 05. So you provide from 6 to 00FF. So the first part of it's saying like it's in this region or whatever. But yeah, I going a bit more into it. It was the offset, then you could basically tell it to execute whatever function you're giving it the offset to. So it depends
Mhm.
on how things are compiled, but one that they found was something like launch RAM on the Nexus 5. And yeah, the full write up kind of goes into the detail of how they kind of or looped through or went over all the different options there, but it was essentially finding a handler that would execute something that they actually wanted.
Yeah. And I mean, let's just take this opportunity to say like this is such an obvious issue, like having like an index into a handler table and not doing any verification checks on it. Like
What if
Bluetooth
they
code
wanted
is
to
just so
implement
shit.
the 255th?
Just have a macro that has the max and then you change it every time you add a new command. Like Bluetooth code just is so shit. Like it's just incredible.
Yeah,
Like
no,
I
I
feel
mean,
like you
this
should never
is.
find an issue like that in something used so
It's
much.
such. At the same time, that's such a common issue in protocols, actually, now that I think about it. Like, I've seen that plenty, where either an offset like that or just trusting that user input to be okay, like, in a number like that that's just kind of giving the command.
Yeah, I mean, even if they had a check, but they used like assigned integers, so there was an integer overflow or something like that, it would be more understandable. But not checking it at all, it's just like, man, like that's just not something I could really see you coming across in like such low level applications very often. Because most of the time,
Well,
when you're writing
most people
code at
aren't
that
looking
low,
at low level applications, so it's easy to just miss it.
I guess, but like what I was thinking of is, you know, developers that work at that low of a level, like kernel, chip level, stuff like that, most of the time they're aware of such trivial issues. So like you wouldn't think something like that would get past like not even just a code review.
I
Like
mean,
I don't even
kernel,
see how that.
yes. I don't know if I necessarily would agree with just people that work at that level, though.
Okay,
Um, I mean, I
fair
get where
point. You
that
you might
comes
know a
from,
bit more about
but
that.
like I said, I've seen issues like this, or at least heard of them and stuff like before. It's, custom protocol in general.
Yeah.
It's actually like one of the more common things to see, I'd say. Just
Wow.
just with
I just
custom
need to.
protocols, not Bluetooth and stuff, but just custom protocols. You see that.
So
Um,
basically, what you're saying is I need to move into embedded device hacking so I can just get easy bugs.
well, I'm just saying in protocols in general, not necessarily embedded.
Well, I'm just thinking
Uh,
embedded is probably where you'd see more of those protocols, but
well,
yeah.
network
Yeah, network as well, yeah.
is
That's a
kind
fair
of
point.
the big place where you see a lot of different protocols being implemented. One thing I do want to jump back though away from the RCE,
Yeah.
just on the whole framework and stuff. Um, One is just there is a CCC talk about this. That's actually from this past CCC.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see
So they
that.
didn't release all of this until just this month, but they do have a talk that also talks about this, where they did like some live demos and stuff. Um, I don't think it's mentioned in the paper at all. If that's what you're looking for.
Okay.
I think if you just
Keep.
go and Google like InternalBlue, you can find some information about
Yeah,
it.
I'll see if. Oh well, put too many C's there, but yeah, that actually did still find it there. So a deep dive into Bluetooth controller firmware. Yeah, so we'll link that as well, actually, in the like extra links in the description for anybody who wants to check out that video because CCC talks are generally pretty good.
Yeah, and
So
that one's fine. I didn't watch the whole thing, kind of just reviewed over it or scrubbed over it, but it goes into
okay,
more detail. Obviously, the paper I think goes into the most detail, but
yeah,
it's worth a listen. I mean, if you do the Bluetooth work, um, this seems like basically the only option unless you are going to buy like the actual sort of test devices and stuff. This is
which
just a
probably aren't too
Python
cheap. Yeah.
framework.
Yeah, it's a nice like cheap like frame like yeah, a nice cheap setup to use if you don't have the money to pay for like debugging devices or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, so I know we are kind of long on time. I think we're like an hour and a half in.
Or
Two
two and a
hour
half
2.5
hours.
hours, I mean. Yeah. So do you still want to touch on this last topic or
Well, I mean, it is the last topic, so why not?
okay.
We
So
don't have to
yeah,
go
we'll
in.
touch on that.
We don't have to go into too many details here. I mean, the idea here, IRONHIDE, is I love papers always talk about their novel ideas. I mean, this is basically just introducing stronger isolation. Like when you have an insecure, secure world, as like Intel, SGX, and stuff. This is just a stronger isolation between things by having cores. I think what they want to do is have cores actually dedicated to the secure world. But the other thing was in the shared cache that cache areas would be only usable by the secure world. They wouldn't be usable by the insecure world or vice versa. And
Yeah,
that's kind of
so
one of their big things was having that no sharing of the cache. And without that sharing of the cache, you can like flush things out of the cache for like the different attacks that we've talked about in past episodes.
yeah, so I just wanted to bring up for those of you listening and can't read the title, basically the premise of the paper is that this solution they've dubbed IRONHIDE can try to help against like hardware attacks, like microarchitecture. So like like Spectre and stuff like that, like those kinds of
Yeah,
attacks, like branch
specifically they
prediction,
talk a
stuff
lot
like
about the
that.
speculative stuff, but cache timing attacks also.
Yeah. And yeah, their like main thing seems to be just enforcing isolation, which is already done. And
Well,
they
so it is done, but it's done a little bit weaker. In terms of like the shared memory, because we talk about another ones where they try and get some of the cache entries kicked out of the cache, so you can determine if the secure process tries to access it, you can determine how long it takes, and that way you know if it had to fetch it or if it had it in cache already.
yeah.
So in this case, the insecure world and the secure world, their caches are totally separate, physically separate. So you can't kick things out of the cache, and that is one of its big things. That does mean it's less optimal use of both the CPU core, because I believe what they want to do with this is also that it won't co-execute insecure and secure code at the same time. Is the other thing. It won't switch back and forth between them. So core at any given time would be a secure core, which
Yeah.
also prevents some of the speculative attacks.
Yeah. So one thing I did notice, they're talking about enforcing the stronger isolation and stuff, and they were talking about how like low overhead it is. So they're saying like it's shown to outperform temporal isolation due to its better resource utilization and stuff like that. Do you think that's a fair argument, considering it's basically just doing what's already been done, just a bit better? Like it seems kind of weird to throw that in there. Like it's
Well, so it is because it doesn't have some of the overhead of the context switching and stuff, because it doesn't switch between the secure and insecure world.
okay. That's a
Like
fair
the
point.
coexecution. Like there are some actual performance things here. That said, cache is a scarce resource.
Yeah.
We're not talking about like, cache on the file system. We're talking about like your CPU cache.
Yeah. L2. Stuff
This
like that, yeah.
it's a scarce resource, so having some that's dedicated purely to the secure world and will not go to the insecure world, it leads to a less than optimal use of the cache. Now they do try to address that a little bit by having some dynamic um use of it, where it can kind of be, well, I guess that picture there, they kind of show
Expanded.
it'll expand
Yeah.
or that little bit. Like they tried to deal with that a little bit, but generally this is going to be less optimal cache use in general.
Yeah. So that being said, do you think this is a practical solution? Do you think it
Maybe.
could be
I
maybe?
think it could be applied. Like I think um yeah, I mean in the future, I think with a bit more work it could actually be a practical thing. I mean, granted, I don't do any sort of chip design or design at this level. Um I remember like it actually I won't go with that, but yeah, I
Okay.
don't do the sort of chip design, so I can't really say like how if it will for sure. But my thought is like there is some potential performance benefit here. There is more security. There are reasons to actually do that.
Yeah.
Actual performance, we'll see, but I could see this being used as a stepping stone. I mean, I often say, it's a first step with a lot of these papers. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's true. It's the first step towards something, and I could see this being a something that is used in the future.
But I guess in credit to this paper, I think this is maybe a little bit more practical than some of the other solutions to speculative attacks we've talked about in the past. This
Oh,
seems like the
definitely.
most likely to be useful, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with
Just because
that.
of low overhead, yeah. So yeah, that pretty much sums that up. We can't talk too much about it just because it's another one of those, like, it's 15-page paper. So and
Yeah,
we're
there's
already
a lot
running
of
quite low on
detail.
time. So if you want to check it out, though, it's there. That pretty much wraps up the podcast. We didn't originally set up to talk about this, but I just wanted to bring it up because I just thought of it last minute. Did you see anything about the new Windows terminal they're doing?
No, what's going on with that?
They're actually, so I think it's set to be released in mid-June, but they actually just unveiled a new Windows terminal that they're working on. So I'll bring it up here.
Is it PowerShell or command based?
It's command based.
Okay.
CA.
I can appreciate that.
I'm trying to bring up a nice link of it, but I'm just. Oh yeah, here's one. So you can see that's like tabbed. It's basically it's a lot like Bash. It looks a lot like Bash. So yeah, it's not like too security focused. It's just something I thought would be interesting to bring up because.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a Windows user, so that like it's definitely relevant to me. Okay, it looks like you can choose command or PowerShell and stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it just. I think it'll be nice when it finally does get unveiled.
Assuming it can be resized and stuff, that would be a big plus.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, Windows Terminal just has its issues.
There's a lot of small things with the design. Another issue I've come across is for some reason, maybe this like new terminal will actually fix it. I really hope so. Is that Windows, they like to try to like be different from like Bash and stuff like that. So they'll like they'll have a lot of similar functionality that Bash has, but they'll just rename it to some obscure thing that you have to like have open in a web browser, like a manual open all the time because their terms are just so weird.
I mean, if you use it enough, you kind of figure that out. Like if you've worked with the PowerShell enough, like PowerShell is probably a good example of that because it's always so long-winded because it has like full access to like .NET and everything. So like you can do like a ton with PowerShell that's like really tightly integrated with Windows. But yeah, that's one big reason why until WSL came out, though, like Bash on Windows, until that, I would always install like the normal like GNU tools, just so I'd have a better environment from a Windows terminal.
Yeah. So hopefully that'll change it. It'll be kind of like Ubuntu, Bash on Windows, but you know, without the file system stupidity stuff. So that'd be nice. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah,
I definitely didn't know about that. So
yeah, it was just
look at it.
I think it was just posted yesterday or today. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but that pretty much concludes this podcast. We will be back again next week. Talk about more stuff. You know.
Yeah, can't tell you what the topics will be next week, but yeah. Well, 3 o'clock or what is it? 1 p.m. Pacific, or is it
noon Pacific?
Noon Pacific.
Yeah.
Time zones are hard.
They are always. But yeah, we'll be back with you guys again next week, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, and yeah, we'll see you guys then.
All right, see you guys.